Chapter 996. Zhuo said earnestly, "Classmate Shin Wuxiu, you really shouldn't be angry about this. You shouldn't blame the heavens and accuse others. You should reflect on yourself and work hard to improve yourself. You should hope for the day when you can take revenge." Kami no Su was speechless. Why did he give her a lesson for no reason? The bigger the fist, the bigger the argument. So Xiaoduo asked with a face full of surprise, "Are you still a martial artist? Are you not a martial artist? Why would you ask such a ridiculous and weird question? Do you think that you can't do anything to me in this lifetime? That you will never be able to catch up with me? That's why you give up and want to take advantage of me with your mouth?" You. Kami no Su was furious. This is clearly the logic of a robber. Zhuo spread his hands. No, 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 no. Every word I say is reasonable and realistic. Do you think that I am your relative? That I have to visit you during festivals? Treat you politely? Bro, we're mortal enemies. We are two hostile races. Your thinking is simply ridiculous. Saying that you are naive is the most beautiful way to put it. I should say that you are an idiot. Wouldn't that be an insult to idiots? I don't think even an idiot would say something like that, right? Isn't it right for me to snatch what you have? Kami no Su was stunned. She was speechless for a long time. So Xiaoduo was exasperated. You should reflect on yourselves. Shahun took a deep breath and narrowed his eyes. Brothers with words are not pleasant to hear, but they are the truth. They are the most realistic words. Kami no Su was panting, but she quickly calmed down. Her agitated mood also calmed down. She took a deep breath and looked at Xiaoduo. Yes, you are right. I was wrong. It is right for you to snatch what I have. It is also right for me to snatch what I have. It's just that I'm not strong enough. I should not complain. We are enemies, that's all. Brothers. Kami no Su nodded and said sincerely, I didn't see through you. For Kami no Su to be chosen as the representative of the main family, she was naturally shrewd. She was also a smart person. Just now, her anger had rushed to her head, and because of the many painful experiences she had gone through, she had not chosen her words carefully. At this moment, he calmed down in an instant, already adjusting himself. Just this kind of bearing was already worthy of the Umno Alliance's title of Outstanding Descendant. Xiaoduo narrowed his eyes and said, Don't you see it now? If you can correct your mistakes, you are a good child. The veins on Kami no Su's temples throbbed, but she immediately smiled bitterly. Yes, it didn't sound good. There was also mockery and sarcasm. But this was the reality. They were enemies, not your parents. There was no reason for them to spoil you. After another round of verbal advantage, Xiaoduo had a better idea of what was going on. It seemed that the other party urgently needed the two treasures in his hands. What I am interested to know now is, how do you want to cooperate? Xiaoduo asked. As long as you contribute the sky-shaking gong and the sky thunder mirror, then you can control them yourself. If you can't control them, we can also help. First, we have to get through this life and death crisis. Hai Hunshan said seriously, we promise that we will never embezzle. The treasures in your hands are yours. If we violate this promise, may the heavens and earth destroy us. Xiaoduo looked at the flaming spear pressing down again. He felt that the air in the whole space was almost burning, and the whole ground was already starting to emit smoke. It was only because they were all high-level warriors that they could temporarily withstand it. But it was really just barely holding on. Besides, other than himself, the others probably couldn't hold on for much longer. The most obvious evidence was that their hair was all curled up. He said, Everyone has the same goal. We all want to live. Then let's cooperate. Although I still don't trust you, I am not afraid that you will embezzle my things. Hai Hunshan said anxiously, then, but there is still a problem that needs to be said first, and that is, after we get through this crisis, we can enter the arcane realm and obtain the inheritance. Then, how will the subsequent benefits of this opportunity be distributed? Who will take the majority? Xiaoduo asked. Everyone was stunned. In front of them was a fierce battle. It was already a great thing to be able to survive, but this guy still had the mood to think about benefits and so on. He was really desperate to take advantage of others. He would rather die than suffer a loss. In the past, people used to say that he was greedy for money, but this guy was more greedy for money than life. This depends on each person's fate, Haihun-chan said. Everyone nodded desperately. After entering, it would naturally depend on each person's fate. What else was there to say? So Xiaoduo snorted and said, that won't do. In the current situation, it won't work without me. So, I want to take the majority. On what basis? Sha Jiao was furious. On the basis that I am Zhuo Xiaoduo. On the basis that if you don't agree, we will all die together. Zhuo Xiaoduo was high-spirited. We martial artists of astral souls are never afraid of death. I, Zhuo Xiaoduo, am even more unafraid of death. How many people in the world are as generous and heroic as I, Zhuo Xiaoduo? Zhuo Xiaoduo said, anyway, I want to take the majority. This spear is coming down. Sha's eyes almost popped out. I want to take the majority. Absolutely not. Haihun-chan was furious. Then we would rather die with you. We would rather die together. Everyone shouted together. Only you, Zhuo Xiaoduo, are not afraid of death? Who among us is afraid? Although we don't want to die, if you push us too far, then we will die together. Zhuo Xiaoduo saw that he had pushed them too far and frowned. Look at all of you. Why don't you reflect on yourself? Is this the attitude of cooperation? I was just joking. These guys, it seems like they're really not afraid of death, but I am really afraid, as Xiaoduo rolled his eyes and said, how about this? I won't take the majority. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief and thought to themselves that this guy was indeed the most afraid of death. They had made the right bet. But no matter what, I still want to take some advantage. Zhuo Xiaoduo said indignantly. Am I supposed to help for nothing? This is the Umno Alliance's space of inheritance. My bloodline is different. Once I enter, the chances of me not getting anything is simply too high. Am I supposed to just watch you guys take the benefits? Am I supposed to get nothing? Everyone was stunned. It was not that Zhuo Xiaoduo did not have any concerns. In fact, they were huge. The difference in bloodline could easily get Zhuo Xiaoduo out. There was a high possibility that this guy would not get anything. What should we do? I'm not greedy. Just give me 30% of what each of you gets. Zhuo Xiaoduo said. Bullshit. Everyone was furious. What's the difference between this and you taking the majority? If each of the 9 of us gets 30%, you will get 2. 7%. The others will get 0. 7% each? How can you say that? 20% each. It couldn't go any lower. I'd rather die. Zhuo Xiaoduo was very emotional. He waved his arms to show his determination. 10% each, no more. Tu Yinxiao shouted angrily. After he shouted, he saw that the other 8 people were looking at him angrily. Deal. Sure enough, Zhuo Xiaoduo made a prompt decision and closed the deal immediately. Tu Yinxiao was dumbfounded. Sha Hun and Haihun-chan looked at Tu Yinxiao speechlessly. You're actually Sha Diao, aren't you? When did you change your soul? In the current situation, Zhuo Xiaoduo is more afraid of death than we are. If we delay any longer, he will agree to it himself. You're giving away 10% for nothing. And it's still 10% for everyone. What's the difference between this and taking the majority? Tu Yinxiao was dumbfounded and stammered, I. This. Zhuo Xiaoduo said unhappily, 10% for everyone, 90% for all of you, and 90% for me. How can I take the majority? Isn't this too fair? Sha Jiao murmured, yes, everyone gets 90%. It's very fair. He scratched his head and vaguely felt that something was wrong. But he couldn't figure out what was wrong. Sha Han was so angry that foam appeared on his mouth. Does Xiaoduo really not get anything when he goes in? What if he gets something? This fucking. Everyone was speechless. A few of them who hadn't thought of this suddenly realized. They cursed at once. That's too sinister. That's too shameless. So Xiaoduo himself had said that the astral souls might not get anything from the Soul Oracle legacy, but it was just a possibility. What if they did get it? Besides, if they couldn't get it, why would he appear here? The moment they thought of this, the 9 of them suddenly felt so depressed that they wanted to die. They had been fooled. They had been taken advantage of. Just now, Zhuo Xiaoduo had led them on, and they hadn't thought of this at all. 10% for each of you. You've all agreed. This is the space of the sorcerer god, and your ancestors are watching you. You can't go back on your words, so Xiaoduo said. Everyone hung their heads dejectedly. All right, it's a deal. Since Tu Yinxiao had agreed to it, it meant that everyone else had agreed to it as well. As members of the Umno Alliance, they valued promises more than the heavens. They could only hope that Zhang Xian's bloodline would really be rejected in the space of the Soul Oracle legacy. Let's begin, Shahan said. Wait a moment. So Xiaoduo continued. Also, if we were to cooperate, who would have the final say? Who will be the boss? There isn't a unified command here, so we have to decide on this beforehand, right? Otherwise, wouldn't the cooperation be a mess? What's the point of that? I'm already used to being the boss. The faces of the 9 of them warped even further. This fellow sure was ambitious. His words were clearly implying that he wanted to be the boss. However, there were 9 of them here. Even if you were to become the boss, it would only be in name. So what? Isn't it just a matter of minutes for us to make you a figurehead? Shahan said, Brother Zhua, it's not that we don't agree to it, but your understanding of our fighting style and the usage of our treasures is limited. Isn't it difficult for you to command us? So Xiaoduo replied matter-of-factly, What's so difficult about that? I'm in my own home, so I don't know anything about my brothers. However, I have an advisor with me, so I'll just be in charge of being the boss. The 9 of them were rendered speechless once more. To think that you're a figurehead in your own home as well. Just because you want to be the boss, you're reduced to a figurehead. Is this the so-called spiritual leader? To think that you're still so excited about it. If that's the case, wouldn't this matter be much easier to deal with? No problem, no problem. You be the boss then, all right? Hai Hunshan felt as if he was being roasted alive. He hurriedly said, Brother Zhua, it's too late. So Xiaoduo frowned and tilted his head. What did you call me? Boss Zhua. The 9 of them shouted at the same time. It'll be too late if we wait any longer. The densely packed, flaming spears were only 50 meters away from the top of their heads. Everyone was so anxious that blisters appeared on their lips. So Xiaoduo cupped his hands and smiled. Hello, brothers. Hello, Zhua. The 9 of them shouted until their throats were hoarse. While he was greeting Boss Zhua, he could not wait to rush up and strangle his boss Zhua to death. They wanted to strangle him and ask, Why are you so calm? Why are you so calm? Zhua, can you hurry up? Hai Hunshan's hair caught on fire. He hurriedly tried to extinguish the fire, but there was still smoke rising up. It was a spectacle. Moreover, similar spectacles were also accumulating power and waiting to be unleashed on others, with more than enough to spare. Zhua, hurry up. Those who had treasures on them were already holding them in their hands. Their hearts were burning with anxiety, and their emotions were surging. Zhua Xiaoduo stood up and took out the sky-shaking gong and the sky thunder mirror. He raised them in front of his eyes and said, How do I use these things? The urge to rush up and beat him to death burned in their hearts. They were eager to try, but they forced themselves to hold back. This was too infuriating. This was too infuriating. Can you drag it out a little longer? Can you? If you drag it out a little longer, you'll become a starting point platinum like your father. This should be, they hurriedly explained. I'll explain this sky-shaking gong. Kami no Su was the most miserable. She had lost the protection of her treasure and was about to faint. She had to teach Zhua Xiaoduo how to use the sky-shaking gong as fast as she could. Before she could finish, Zhua Xiaoduo threw the sky-shaking gong to her. I don't want to listen to your nonsense. You can use it and return it to me when you're done. It'll save me a lot of trouble. Kami no Su was stunned. She held the sky-shaking gong in her hand and felt the aura of the treasure merge with her body. She felt much better in an instant. Although she knew he was an enemy, she still couldn't help but feel grateful. Thank you for your trust. Kami no Su said solemnly. How do you use this sky thunder mirror? Just one sky-shaking gong isn't enough, is it? Zhua Xiaoduo ignored her and continued to ask. In less than 2 seconds, everyone clearly explained how to use the sky thunder mirror. Shahan couldn't wait and shouted loudly. So, I'm the military advisor. Everyone, please take your positions according to my instructions. Whoosh. Everyone straightened their bodies and waited for the battle. Baswa, you're the strongest among us. Stay in the middle and look around. Those who don't have any treasures to protect them, please take care of them. When I give the order to attack, activate the heavenly thunder mirror and release lightning at maximum power. Shah Hun spoke at an extremely fast speed, but his enunciation was still very clear. Even Shah Hun himself felt that this was the only day in his life when he was eloquent. If he kept speaking at this speed, he could guarantee that all the sharp-tongued people would retreat. Hai Hun Shan, here. According to the legendary Great Formation of Heavenly Beings, empty the positions of Zhu Wu Zhu Rong and Hutu Zhu Wu. The rest of you, take 9 positions with Zhua as the core. Okay, the 9 people responded in unison. As the incomplete formation was built, they all operated their cultivation methods at full strength. In an instant, an inexplicable aura was suddenly activated. Suddenly, it soared into the sky. At this moment, the biggest surprise that Shah Hun and the others felt happened all of a sudden. This huge surprise shocked the 9 people to the point that they went crazy on the spot. Chapter 997. As Shah Hun and the others pushed their cultivation to their limits, their auras surged to their limits. All kinds of complicated auras filled the area and surged into the sky. The formation was connected, and a 9-colored light gathered around Zhuo, who was at the center. Zhuo only felt that the aura on his body suddenly appeared to be in a natural state. The cultivation technique of the 1,000 Souls Nightmare Hammer was actually circulating on its own, flowing against the current and flowing through his entire body. This was the unique aura of a flood that could destroy the world. It was as though the boundless sea had suddenly encountered a hurricane that surpassed the limits of the world. Huge waves surged violently, and when the waves reached their most intense, a terrifying power that could destroy the world was born. All of a sudden, the gates of hell appeared behind Zhuo, and it opened up in a flash. A boundless torrential flood surged out. Countless vengeful spirits and malicious ghosts let out mournful and ferocious shrieks, looking extremely ferocious. An innumerable amount of white-boned soldiers came out in groups. It was as if there was no end to them, and there was no end to them. They charged into the sea of flames in the sky. The power of the flood that had appeared suddenly merged with the power of the others. There was no gap between them at all, and they merged together perfectly, forming a powerful torrent. Then, the power of the flood took over the dominant position. Mixed with the unique power of the 6 great shamans and the 9 descendants of the direct lineage, the power of the flood soared into the sky. The sudden surge of powerful aura actually forced the flame spear in the sky back by 10 meters. What kind of frightening might was this? It shook the heavens and shook the earth. As long as they continued to work hard, they would be able to clear this life and death soul oracle trial. But what was even more shocking was that Hai Hun Shan and the others were dumbfounded. The heck, the 9 of them were completely dumbfounded. Originally, there were only 5 clans here. How did it suddenly become 6? And the power of the flood that appeared at the end, that was clearly the power of the direct lineage of the Flood Witch. No, that was clearly even more pure than the aura of the direct lineage of the Flood Witch, more authentic, more powerful. This aura made everyone involuntarily think of the legendary the Flood Witch. Not only did the overwhelming aura not show any signs of weakening, it even seemed to be growing stronger and stronger. At the same time, the gates of hell also seemed to be affected by the bloodline power of the primordial spirit, causing it to become clearer and clearer. Oh my God! Even Sand Soul, a wise and steady man, couldn't help but exclaim in astonishment at this moment. There was no need to even mention the others. This kind of aura could only be emitted by a member of the Hong family who couldn't be any more direct. Shaja, Shayu, Shadiao, Hai Hun Shan, Tu Yin Xiao, Tu Yin Yun, Kami no Su, Yin Ziki, and the others were so shocked that they forgot to circulate their energy. Their minds were completely blank, as though they were struck by lightning. Boomed! The towering waves surged up once more, and the flame spear array charged towards the sky. Then, Hai Hun Shan and the others were all in a daze. Then, the original supporting force instantly disappeared. The shackles of the flaming spear array were all gone, as if they had been provoked, and even more so, as if they had met their nemesis in their previous life. They took a slight step back, and then, with the momentum of toppling mountains and overturning seas and the Milky Way pouring down, they brazenly fell. A blurry roar suddenly sounded in the air. It was a roar that seemed to come from the depths of one's soul. Gong gong. This roar was really blurry. It sounded more like a buzzing roar. Then, the flaming spear array in the sky fell down crazily, and the monstrous waves were suppressed in an instant. Zhuo, who bore the brunt of the attack, felt that he could be crushed at any time. He roared in exasperation. "What you all doing? Staring at each other without doing anything? Damn it! How dare you say that you didn't cheat me?" At this moment, Zhuo really felt wronged, extremely wronged. He felt that he had been cheated. He had been so careful, but he was still cheated. He was so kind. How could those guys bear to do that? Where was the basic trust between people? These guys pushed him up, and then they retreated. Damn it. He was cheated so badly that he couldn't die in peace. He was heartbroken. When everyone woke up from their dream, the flame spear array was already above their heads. Instantly, they were scared out of their wits. "Array, rise." Shahun's voice changed. It was heart-wrenching. Quick! Everyone who woke up from their stupor tried their best to gather the power of Zhuo, who was in the middle, and rose up again. "Activate the treasure." Shahun's voice was hoarse. Zhuo was the fastest to react. He activated the heavenly thunder mirror in his hand, poured all his strength into it, and shot it out directly. Instantly, that countless lightning bolt shot out from the heavenly thunder mirror, and its power was unparalleled. Then, the earth-penetrating seal and the divine spirit seal of the two family emitted a bright light. Yin Ziqi's yin-yang mirror, Shahun's soul-piercing arrow, Shaja's golden soul sword, and Hai Hunshan's immortal binding lock were all activated. They converged into a dazzling light, which was mixed with the unique attributes of the Wu people's techniques and divine spirit power. It collided with the flame spear array in the sky. The flame spear array in the sky seemed to have sensed the unprecedented power of this attack. After a collision, it let out an earth-shattering roar. The flame spear array immediately retreated a few hundred feet, and the scorching heat was also retracted. The source of this explosion was, of course, Zhuo was doing. Everyone's ultimate strength soared into the sky, and it actually broke the powerful and invincible flame spear array into countless pieces. At this moment, the explosive power that had broken out of the encirclement had caused the sky to clear up. Although this was partly due to the fact that the flame spear had sensed the aura of the sorcerer tribe's treasure and bloodline cultivation method, it did not directly attack. However, the power of this attack that Zhuo had activated had reached a terrifying level. At least, Hai Hun Shan and the others knew what was going on. If they only combined their strength, even if they had enough treasures, they would only feel a little better. It was impossible for them to counterattack the flame spear array or even destroy a lot of flame spears. This was something that had already been tested before. If that wasn't the case, why would he need to beg Zhuo for help? It's done. Hai Hun Shan and the others sighed in amazement in their hearts, but at the same time, they were overjoyed. The heavy stone in their hearts was finally lifted. The land of Zhu Wu, the soul of Zhu Rong, the flame sea overturning the sky, the palace of inheritance. This was a legend that had been passed down in the Wu people for many years. Today, they finally met it. According to legend, back then, Dong Wang felt that Zhu Wu Zhu Rong's soul was too strong and didn't accept the inheritance. Therefore, he purposely let go of Zhu Rong's remnant soul and allowed it to be passed down to future generations. Of course, this was just a legend. The Wu people of the monster race were also enemies. Whether or not Dong Wang of the monster race was really so kind as to let Zhu Rong's remnant soul pass down his inheritance was a matter of opinion. But now, after coming to this place, they felt that this legend was actually true. At least, this was the real land of Zhu Wu Zhu Rong's inheritance. An ultimate attack filled with the power of the Soul Oracle and the Wu people should be enough. Hai Hanshan looked at the flame spear array above his head and couldn't help but wonder. But why aren't the flame spears in the sky retreating? The attack just now should be enough to prove that we are qualified to receive the inheritance, right? Everyone was surprised by the current situation. That's right. Just now, they clearly felt the recognition of Lord Zhu Wu's remnant soul, and the danger had already passed. But why were the flame spears still hanging in the sky? The danger wasn't completely over yet. This didn't seem right. Everyone turned their heads in confusion and looked to the other side. They saw Zhua Xiaoduo looking at the sky with a dumbfounded expression. Everyone looked over suspiciously and saw that the tip of the flame spears in the sky had all gathered neatly and were all pointing in the same direction. And that direction was the tip of Zhua Xiaoduo's nose. So Xiaoduo, who was being pointed at by thousands and billions of flame spears, instantly became cross-eyed. What? What's going on? Zhua Xiaoduo was dumbfounded by the sudden turn of events. You tricked me? You must have tricked me. Zhua Xiaoduo instinctively felt that he had been tricked. He was inexplicably indignant and sorrowful as he lashed out. Fuck, so this was the reason. I was kind and painstakingly helped you get through the danger, and then nothing happened to you. Instead, all the attacks were directed at me. Because I have the bloodline of the human race? Because I don't have the bloodline of the Wu people? So that's why. How vicious. How despicable. How shameless. Zhua Xiaoduo was furious. His eyes were bloodshot as he glared at Sha Hun and the others with extreme hatred. He was so angry that he wanted to eat their flesh and skin, grind their bones, and scatter their ashes. He was absolutely irreconcilable. Little did he know that Hai Hanshan and the others were also completely dumbfounded. We really don't know what's going on. According to what we know, as long as we pass the test, everything will be fine. The flaming spear in the sky should fall down and turn into a sea of fire again. Then, the inheritance palace would appear, and those who meet the requirements would be able to enter and inherit Zhu Wu Zhu Rong's legacy. Nitrogen. Why did Zhua Xiaoduo have such a problem? Don't look at us, and don't look at us like that. We really don't know anything. The 10 people present were all dumbfounded. They were at a loss. Zhua Xiaoduo also realized that this group of people didn't know anything. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to disguise themselves so well. Especially that Xiaodiao. It was even more impossible for him to be so sincere. Otherwise, his acting skills would be too good. Moreover, all 9 of them were so good. It was a gathering of award-winning actors and actresses. At this moment, the wind and clouds in the sky gathered rapidly. Soon, a human face appeared. It was the face of the red-robed man. Yes, it was the face of the supreme of all flames and flames, Zhu Wu Zhu Rong. The eyes on this face were full of uncertainty and doubt. He looked at Zhua Xiaoduo for a while and then disappeared immediately. Then, the endless flaming spears swooped down towards Zhua Xiaoduo. They were aimed at Zhua Xiaoduo himself. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Boom, boom, boom. Chapter 998. Shockwaves rolled, destroying the heavens and earth. It seemed like it would not give up until it turns Zhua Xiaoduo into minced meat. Hai Hanshan and the others were so scared that they almost peed their pants. Their hearts were swollen from fear. However, when the energy came down, it suddenly sent Hai Hanshan and the others flying with a bang. It was clear that it was not going to deal with them. It was going to deal with the most handsome one in the middle. With a bang, the 9 of them were sent flying in 9 different directions. Boom boomed, the flaming spears in the sky were only aimed at Zhua Xiaoduo. They were densely packed and crazily bombarding him. Furthermore, for some reason, they actually restricted Zhua Xiaoduo's space to dodge. He wanted to dodge, but he was directly confined by the space. Throughout the whole process, he could only meet force with force. He was passively attacked, blasted, and beaten up. Xiaoduo roared, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets. Today I'll be screwed by you guys. The cat spirit sword was the first to attack the flaming spears. Kami no Su shouted from afar. Although there's no hope for you today, I, Kami no Su, swear on my life and soul that this has nothing to do with us. This is not our plan. He didn't know if Xiaoduo heard him or not, but he could see that this guy was already fighting with the flaming gun without any fear of death. He was wholeheartedly focused on dealing with a dangerous situation. The flaming spears were powerful, so Xiaoduo roared in anger and staggered left and right. However, he was also desperately attacking with his sword. Although he was giving it his all, he was still suppressed to an absolute disadvantage in an instant. Hai Hanshan and the others turned their heads and looked at Kami no Su. Did I hear wrongly? Kami no Su was still calling for Zwa at a time like this? What kind of mentality was this? The cooperation was over, and the crisis was over. Shouldn't she treat him like a piece of toilet paper and throw him away after using him? Could it be that this kind of person was still worth lingering over? Could it be that this fellow was so satisfied with being tortured by that fellow that he couldn't bear to do so? Kami no Su panted and looked at everyone's gazes. She said angrily, "What are you looking at? Is it strange? Could it be that you've forgotten your own promise?" Everyone felt a chill in their hearts. This was a promise. In this inheritance space, they would always respect Zwa Xiaoduo as their boss. You only call me Zwa once? Can we afford to lose face in front of our ancestors? That's right. We can't and we shouldn't betray you at this time, Shahan said. That was an oath in front of ancestor sorcerer. Kami no Su said, "It doesn't matter if I can't or if I shouldn't. In any case, I can't afford to lose face like this." He took a deep breath and stuffed a healing pill into his mouth. He said, "The oath is still ringing in my ears. I'm going. We Wu people, since ancient times, honor our promises. We promised Xiaoduo that we would respect him as our boss in this inheritance space. Now, we haven't left yet. You're going to save him?" Xiaoyu frowned. "Yes," Kami no Su said. "My words are like the wind. I have no regrets even if I die 9 times. Right now, we're still in the inheritance space. He's my boss now. There's no reason for me to watch my boss risk his life and do nothing. Moreover, this is after he saved us first. After we leave, no matter what our stance is, how we fight to the death, how we act, these are all matters after we leave. But in here, he's my boss. I've acknowledged him," Kami no Su said indifferently. "No matter how unwilling I was when I acknowledged him. But I acknowledged him. I acknowledged him as my boss, and he did indeed help me through life and death. Then I naturally have to go save him. I'll risk everything and do everything I can to help him. If I save him, I'll have no regrets even if I die." "You're really going to die?" Xiaoyu said angrily as she looked at the crazy lightning of the flame spear. Kami no Su is right. This time, the one who agreed was actually Sha Diao. Sha Diao said, "Kami no Su, you're a man. Let's go together. I've already made the oath, so we should follow it. No matter how much of a bastard this guy is, how annoying he is, and how much I want to kill him, in this inheritance space, he's my boss. I'm going too." Hai Hanshan, Shahan, Shaja, and the others laughed out loud, almost at the same time. "Even if we die here today, we can't let the sorcerer tribe's tens of thousands of years of pride be lost on us. Wuxiu is right. Even if we die, we can't let our ancestors lose face. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go." Tu Yinxiao had already charged ahead. "Even if we die in the hands of Zwa Xiaoduo on the battlefield in the future, we can't lose face today." Xiaoyu smiled bitterly, but there was still pride in her smile. As expected of the brothers of the Wu people, you're a man of your words, and you have no regrets even if you die 9 times. Let's go together." The 9 descendants of the witch tribe laughed out loud in unison. With their treasures in hand, they charged forward and charged into the vast sea of fire. "Zwa, we didn't let you down," Kami no Su shouted. "After we get out, let's fight to the death. Since I called you Zwa, let's live and die together." Zhuo was in a critical moment, but it wasn't a moment of life and death. This was because he keenly sensed that although these flaming spears still looked terrifying and had the power to easily kill him, in terms of actual lethality, they were much weaker than before. They no longer looked like they were going to directly kill him and leave him some leeway. It was more like stretching himself to the limit, squeezing himself as much as he could, and testing his limits? Or what? Zhuo tried his best to resist the urge to take out his final trump card, the 99 cat hammer. He only circulated the 1,000-soul nightmare hammer's mantra and used the monstrous power he created before to resist with all his might. He wasn't stupid, since this power could merge with the power of the other Umno Alliance disciples. It was naturally the best way to deal with the current situation. After all, this was the Wu people's space of inheritance. The Flaming Sun Sutra couldn't be exposed now, and the Flaming Sun Sutra would definitely not be recognized. Since the offensive had already turned into a controllable range, it was best not to use his final trump card, the 99 kitty hammer. The previous changes, whether it was the space ring that shouldn't have been able to be opened or the sudden appearance of the flood, were already very eye-catching. If he rashly used the 99 cat hammer again, it would definitely be noticed by those brats. It was better to keep this trump card. If he woke up when he found out, how would he hit them in the future? They were still enemies in their bones. He wouldn't use it unless his life was at stake. He didn't dare to use the cat's spirit sword in his hand, the Wahuang sword. The Wahuang sword seemed to have a grudge against the owner of this space. If he used it, he would probably be in trouble. Xiaoduo pushed all the power in his body to the limit. At this moment, the qi in his dantian was like a raging wave, going against the momentum and counterattacking the flaming spear array in the sky. The cat spirit sword's tip was pointed at the rainstorm sword technique. Every move, every style, every sword strike, every attack accurately struck the tip of the flaming spear. In the continuous exchange, Zhuo could clearly feel that the consciousness in the sky was constantly growing uncertain, doubtful, and hesitant. It was a special feeling of, is this brat down there? Why is he so strange? Luckily, it's just a remnant of my soul, so my cognition is limited. If it was just a little bit clearer. Otherwise, I definitely wouldn't have been able to escape today and would have died who knows where. Zhuo's mind was full of thoughts. He couldn't help but sweat profusely. While he was thinking, the flaming spear in the sky had fallen again. In the roar, Zhuo screamed again and again. The power of this wave of attack was actually much stronger than the last time, that it was an extreme posture of wanting to squeeze Zhuo to the limit until he was smashed to pieces. Moreover, as the power of the huge waves driven by Xiaoduo became stronger and stronger, the flaming spear in the sky faintly showed a subtle feeling that it was forcibly suppressing the fire, but was about to be unable to suppress it. The attack was getting fiercer and fiercer, and the offensive was getting more and more explosive. Xiaoduo tried his best to parry, but the cat's spirit sword, which had reached the level of spirit weapon, let out a burst of mournful cries. The sword light gradually scattered, and it was no longer a threat. As time went on, Xiaoduo felt more and more pressure. It seemed that he couldn't hold on any longer, and he had no choice but to use his hammer. He didn't have any hope for Hai Hanshan and the others. He was already in a dead end, and the other party, who had escaped, was lucky if they didn't attack him. Why would they come in to help? After all, they were on opposing sides after all. At this moment, a loud roar came from outside. We didn't let you down. After we get out, let's fight to the death again. Since I called you Zhuo, let's live and die together. With a violent roar, the 9 people of the Umno Alliance stepped into the raging flames again and entered the battle aggressively. Shahan shouted, "Everyone, take your positions." Xiaoduo was still hesitating. The previous Tian God killing formation had been formed in seconds. Then, it was the same power of the cultivation methods of their respective clans. It was the same people. It was the same treasures. They showed their power again, and the power was no less than before. There was an additional momentum of advancing courageously. Zhuo subconsciously cooperated. The monstrous flood gathered all the power of his side and rushed to the sky, shaking the flaming spear formation again to boom. This time, the power of the attack was actually several times greater than the previous one, because this time they were really working together and they really didn't hold back. Moreover, their hearts were bright and they were fighting with a clear mind. It was full of generosity and fierceness. The 10 of them didn't distinguish between friend and foe, and they cooperated seamlessly. In the sky, the flaming spear formation was suddenly stopped by the attack. A blurry thought suddenly appeared. Vaguely, it seemed that someone was murmuring in the sky and asking in a low and melancholic voice. It seemed to be asking himself, and it seemed to be asking the heavens, and it also seemed to be asking everyone. Could it be that I was wrong? Was it wrong or not? Back then, was it me or you who was wrong? Wrong, wrong, wrong. Sigh, I was wrong after all. Chapter 999. Will reverberated in the air. That indescribable emotion was also affecting everyone's state of mind. Everyone could clearly feel that indescribable regret and endless melancholy. The shout was crisis was instantly resolved. The power of the Oracle Soul had lifted up this space. At this moment, Zhuo's heart was filled with intense surprise. It could even be said that he was stunned. He turned his head and frowned. "What did you guys come in?" Sha Jiao's face was filled with displeasure. "Although we were forced by the situation, we promised that we would respect you as the boss here. Were we lying? Now that you're in danger, we naturally have to fight side by side and help you. At the very least, when we're in here, you're the boss and we're your subordinates. How can we stand by and do nothing when the boss is in trouble?" These words were said with great reluctance. Hai Shan activated the immortal binding lock with all his strength and said lightly, "Boss, you don't have to be grateful. Once we get out of here, it will be the end of our promise. We will still be enemies of life and death, supporting each other hand in hand, but it will only be limited to this space." Tu Yinyin smiled. "After we get out, if we have the chance to kill you, we won't show any mercy. We'll definitely eliminate you at the first opportunity. An enemy is an enemy. But no matter how special the conditions are, an alliance of friends and brothers is still an alliance. The promise of the Umno Alliance is always valid. Before the special conditions are met, we can't go back on our words." Sha Hun, Sha Zhe, Tu Yin Xiao, and the others laughed in unison. "Zhuo, today we'll fight to the death. Our friendship is life and death. Ha ha, you're the astral souls, and we're the Wu people. We don't have any brotherhood with you, only a promise." Zhuo laughed loudly. "You guys are indeed good men. I underestimated you guys before." The 10 of them once again joined hands to resist the flaming spear array. In the air, the face appeared again. It looked down with a complicated expression. Then, as if it had put down all its worries, it suddenly disappeared. Everyone could clearly feel that an obsession had quietly dissipated. It was a kind of obsession that had lasted for countless years. Perhaps it was because of this obsession that this wisp of remnant soul had survived until now. But for some reason, after seeing the current situation below, it suddenly disappeared. Yes, a faint voice sighed. "It's my fault. I shouldn't have been so stubborn. Ha, brothers. I'm sorry, I'm here." The consciousness quietly dissipated. Then, the flame spears in the air rose higher and higher and began to scatter in all directions. The crisis had been completely overcome. Seeing that the situation, the 10 of them could not help but let out a sigh of relief. "Of you. Of course, I don't feel grateful. Of course of a view of mine. Of you. Of who cares? Kami no Su threw the space-shaking gong over. "I don't need you to feel grateful. I don't need your help. When we leave this place, I'll take this space-shaking gong back with my own hands." "Ha!" Zhuo laughed. However, his heart was in turmoil. At this moment, he thought of many things and understood many things. He finally understood why in the legends, The Alliance and the Astral Souls higher-ups were able to develop feelings for each other. They were able to trust each other. They were able to fight to the death. They were able to send their descendants to the other party for protection and training. They were able to have a drink with each other before the decisive battle between the two armies. In the legends, when the 12 great shamans met with the higher-ups of the Astral Souls, the Heavenly King throne, and the others, most of the time, they were chatting happily. When they got together, they talked about everything. They could even discuss the flaws of martial arts and research the path of martial arts together. This was not without reason. This was indeed a group of lovable enemies. He also realized that this group of Alliance's juniors, at least in terms of human nature, were already capable of doing things that others could not. With a promise, they could easily abandon life and death and move forward courageously. To be fair, if he were in their shoes, Xiaoduo would not dare to say that he would be able to keep his promise. However, this not dare to say already made Xiaoduo feel a little ashamed. Although the actions of the other party had already been seen by countless people as fools in today's society. However, Xiaoduo knew that since ancient times, the ones who were able to do magnificent things and leave behind immortal legends were fools like this. Smart people would not be able to create an eternal legend. At this moment, he looked at the 10 people in front of him with new eyes. He thought of the lone bamboo mountain, the overwhelming number of soldiers who rushed toward his Alliance and self-destructed like locusts. The number of people who were burned without hesitation was shocking. At this moment, Xiaoduo was in a daze again. He thought of these things and understood these things. However, at the same time, he also thought of the boundless cemetery of heroes behind the Sun Moon Pass. He could not help but sigh in disappointment. He said in a low voice, "In front of great benefits, friends are tested. In a battle of life and death, brothers are tested. In the sword and sword, there is a different kind of hero's love." He solemnly raised his head and said in a deep voice, "The 9 of you can be considered heroes. Thank you for the compliment." Hai Hunshin's bulbous nose twitched. He laughed very heartily. He flicked his tongue and spat out a mouthful of phlegm with black smoke. He said, "Although I am ugly, I have never belittled myself, and I will not deny that I am a person." Xiaoduo could not help but be surprised when he heard this. He blurted out, "Hai Hunshan, how can you be so ugly?" This matter was really puzzling. Logically speaking, the Hai family had been passed down for so many years. With such a great power, it was impossible for them to marry an ugly girl. Generations of excellent genes had been passed down. No matter what, it was impossible for them to produce Hai Hunshan's appearance. Apart from Hai Hunshan, the other 8 disciples of the Alliance were all outstanding. Even Sha Yu could not be considered a peerless beauty, but she was still very beautiful and extraordinary. Hai Hunshan smiled faintly. "The reason is not for outsiders to know." Kami no Su chuckled and said, "I know about this. If Zwa is interested." Hai Hunshan was furious. "Don't say it." Xiaoduo was suddenly overflowing with interest. If Kami no Su continued, he would not be interested. However, Hai Hunshan's interruption made Xiaoduo's gossipy heart burn like a flaming gun in the sky. Tell me quickly. Tell your boss." "Boss, I'm very interested." Everyone rolled their eyes. This guy was indeed addicted to being a boss. Xiaoduo looked at the flaming gun in the sky, slowly descending. The sea of fire in the distance gradually formed again. Vaguely, a huge palace was slowly taking shape. However, it was still illusory. There was still some time before it was fully formed. During this period of time, since he had nothing to do, he might as well listen to more gossip. It was an entertainment program. I love to listen to the unhappy things of others. Tell me quickly. Let's have fun together. Xiaoduo said excitedly. The 9 people looked at each other. This guy's gloating attribute was definitely maxed out. Hai Hunshan's face darkened. His threatening eyes swept across the faces of the other 8 people. His eyes clearly said 2 words, "Who dares?" Everyone shrunk their necks under his menacing gaze. Xiaoduo frowned. Suddenly, He strode forward and grabbed Hai Hun Shan by the neck. With a bang, he pressed him to the ground and sat on his head. He exerted force. Puff! Hai Hun Shan's head was directly sat on the ground. He couldn't even make a sound. "Say it," so Xiao Duo said with a smile. Hai Hun Shan has acquiesced. As he said, he grabbed Hai Hun Shan's right hand and made a peace sign. Then Zhui Xiao Duo shouted, "Yeah." Then he said, "You see, right? Hai Hun Shan is so happy." Everyone felt a chill down their spines. They didn't know whether Hai Hun Shan was happy or not, but they saw that he was very happy. It is said that when Hai Hun Shan was young, he went out to gain experience and accidentally encountered a great demon at the bottom of the sea. That great demon was at the critical moment of nirvana and becoming a saint. Hai Hun Shan was disturbed by it. Cough, that was a sky-swallowing toad. A sky-swallowing toad that was almost at the saint level. Then the big demon flew into a rage. He directly covered Chu Yang with the toad clothes he had just taken off. He was deceived for half a month. Even the ancestor of the West Sea went there in person, but the big demon didn't buy it. He only left a sentence, saying, "If you want to digest my 7 treasures toad clothes, you have to wait a long time." At that time, the ancestor of the West Sea asked, when the toad demon said, "If you want to remove the Saint Toad clothes, you have to wait until the heaven falls." So Xiao Duo finally couldn't help but twitch his mouth and laugh. He said, "The old toad said something about nirvana and becoming a saint. Maybe it's true since he doesn't give face to senior magi. But since ancient times, although the righteous path has been through a lot, the evil can't suppress the righteous path. In the end, it's inevitable that the righteous path will grow and the evil will vanish. It's a law of the ancient times." Then, where did the saying about the heaven falling from the heaven come from? Relying on the unorthodox path may be able to gain prestige for a while. But whether it's the ancient records, the history books, or even the unofficial history chapters and novels, there's no such thing as the evil path achieving the righteous path, right? So Xiao Duo snorted. Is this story made up? The heaven falling from the heaven is simply a joke. So be careful with your words. Be careful with your words. Sha Hun said seriously. Although Chan Sheng isn't good at attacking, his cultivation base is high, especially his divination skill. It could be said to be unparalleled in the world. Even the Flood Witch of our tribe is amazed by him. Although this senior is a demon, he has never seen any blood in his life. He has always been kind and aloof from worldly affairs. Otherwise, how can he live in the territory of our Umno alliance? So as Xiao Duo said disapprovingly, since he's so kind, why did he make things difficult for Hai Hun Shan and act rashly? Chapter 1000. Regarding this, Zhu's knowledge of the saint is too shallow, so it's inevitable that he would have such doubts. Sha Hun sighed. Chan Sheng stood aloof from worldly affairs all his life and never got involved in any karma. Even since the ancient times, during the legendary war between the dragons and the phoenixes, this saint already existed, but he never opened his mouth and never cared about any worldly affairs in his life. He only focused on cultivation. Usually, even if the undersea demons fought fiercely in his palace, and even if ordinary loaches crawled into his cave abode, or even under his stomach, he never cared about them. When Brother Hai went to the dojo, it was the delicate moment when Chan Sheng was only half a step away from ascending to the heavens. It was also the last moment when Chan Sheng was taking off his toad clothes. It was said that Chan Sheng's cultivation was different from the Wu people's. He could never transform, but once he took off his toad clothes, he immediately became a saint. Toads are creatures. It's hard to cultivate, hard to understand, and hard to live in the world. That's why there's a saying that their lifespan is less than 30 years. In other words, it's hard for toads to live more than 30 years. But Chan Sheng somehow broke this limit, and ever since he transformed into a toad, he never made a sound. He lived in the world and never got involved in worldly affairs, nor did he get involved in the karma of the mortal world. He didn't move when mountains collapsed in front of him, and he didn't open his eyes when people died. He waited his whole life quietly for the arrival of the last stage, the last moment. It's said that the old man already has a lifespan of 1,000,000 years. It seems that he knew what he should do and how to live in the world from the moment he was born. His goal has always been very clear, and that is to become a saint. Ever since he transformed into a toad, he didn't even eat a mosquito. He didn't even get involved in the karma of a mosquito. The only opening in my life is the time I barged into the sea spirit mountain. But it happened at the most critical moment, which made it difficult for him to complete his cultivation. He's still stuck in the West Sea. No, you're still trying to trick me. Even if you're speaking nonsense in a serious manner, how can you trick me? Xiaoduo suddenly interrupted. Sha Hun was stunned and said in surprise, "So everything I said is true. How did it become a bluff?" Xiaoduo laughed strangely and said, "You still don't want to admit it? You said that Chan Sheng had never spoken in his entire life, that he had never moved, that his cultivation was extraordinary, that he had lived for millions of years, and that he had a kind heart, and so on. Even if what you said was reasonable, you still said that Chan Sheng was proficient in the art of divination and was unparalleled in the world. Isn't this illogical? He has never spoken in his entire life. So how did he manifest the Tao of divination and become unrivaled in the world? Who did he calculate for? And who was the one who spread it to him? It was hard for me to imagine how a person who had never opened his mouth in his entire life would be able to point people in the right direction. Isn't such contradictory fallacies nonsense?" Sha Hun was stunned again. He paused and said, "So, what you said was reasonable, but who said that he couldn't communicate with the outside world if he didn't speak or move in his entire life? Chan Sheng has been staying in the West Sea for countless years. Although it's a big mystery of the UMNO alliance, it's not a top secret. In fact, many disciples of the aristocratic families have to go to the West Sea when they travel outside, hoping to have a relationship with Chan Sheng and get some good luck. It's just that few people can get what they want." Upon hearing this, Xiaoduo's interest was greatly increased. He immediately changed his expression and said, "There is such a miraculous thing? Tell me in detail." Sha Hun smiled and didn't put on airs. He said in a deep voice, "The legend of Chan Sheng in the West Sea has a long history. It has always been a place of great luck for the aristocratic families of the UMNO alliance. Senior Chan Sheng has always been silent and only communicated with the outside world through his mind. Many disciples of the aristocratic families went to see him in the hope that they could be noticed by Senior Chan Sheng so that he could divine their fate. However, there were very few who got what they wanted because Senior Chan Sheng would only divine their fate and point them in the right direction for 3 kinds of people. The first kind is those with great fate, the second kind is those with great fortune, and the third kind is those with great luck." Upon hearing this, Xiaoduo was greatly shocked. This Chan Sheng was actually in the same line of work as him. Moreover, this person's level was many levels higher than his. When he read people's faces, there were also a lot of customers, but how could he compare to this person's high class and high class? Just this point alone was worth him pondering and learning again. He thought in his heart, this Chan Sheng from a tadpole to a toad, and then he didn't move for his whole life. However, he knows the method of cultivation and knows how to avoid karma. His goal is very clear, and he points directly to the path of the divine path. This is a bit strange. Could it be that he is the incarnation of some powerful person after his death? Or could it be that some powerful being had reincarnated in this life? Otherwise, how could it be possible? So Xiaoduo thought in his heart, but didn't say it out loud. He only planned to go to the West Sea of the UMNO alliance if there was a chance. However, his cultivation was too low now. He would be courting death if he went there. He had to wait for an opportunity. Sha Hun paused for a while and said, "The ancestor of the flood of my clan once met Chan Sheng and admired him very much. He even said that Chan Sheng's way of divination was even better than his qi observation technique. It was very mysterious, and he even pointed out that the reason why Chan Sheng only gave divination guidance to those 3 types of people was because those 3 types of people wouldn't bring about bad consequences. Even if there were bad consequences, there would be more good. In other words, those who could get guidance from Changsheng would have great fortune in the future, and this is also the truth. For countless years, those who could get guidance from Changsheng would all achieve great things in the future, and it was also the case. Over the years, those who could get guidance from Changsheng would all achieve great things in the future. That time in the Sea Spirit Mountain, he was really unlucky. Earlier, even if Senior Toad Saint did not give him any guidance, and most, he would just ignore him. Later, Senior Toad Saint would have completed his task and would have been overjoyed. Perhaps he would have even given him some benefits. But when he arrived, Senior Toad Saint had restrained all of his Yuan power, which was rare in his life. Senior Toad Saint could not activate his mind to communicate with the outside world. Inadvertently, he broke the silent technique. A lifetime of work was destroyed in a moment. If Senior Changsheng still didn't react, then that would be the strangest thing in the world. This was also the follow-up of the toad cloak covering the body. It is said that after Hai Hunshan was released, he had to remove the toad cloak and cover Changsheng's body again. And Changsheng had to remove the toad cloak again before he could transcend. Can anyone guess who Changsheng was? So, from then on, Hai Hunshan became like Shahun sighed heavily. As ugly as a toad? So Xiaoduo's eyes widened as he continued this sentence. On the ground, Hai Hunshan, who was being sat on by Zhou Xiaoduo, slammed his hands on the ground angrily. Can you not continue with the last half of your sentence? Why is your bad sense of humor so heavy? Yes, Shahun said. Actually, Brother Hai was still very handsome before. Compared to you, he was only slightly inferior. He was a proper by face. He frowned and thought for a moment. Then, he shook his head regretfully. It's a pity that he has been a toad for too long. I have forgotten what he looked like. Everyone said together, that's true. It seems that I have also forgotten what he looked like. But there's no mistaking his face. Hai Hunshan was speechless, so Xiaoduo moved his butt away. Hai Hunshan had regained his freedom. However, after being hit by this series of words, he buried his head in the ground and did not want to pull it out at all. The flaming spears in the sky once again rained down in rows. However, they no longer had a terrifying lethality. The huge Palace of Heritage had also begun to take shape. During this process, Xiaoduo unexpectedly discovered that he could connect to the Tower of Annihilation. Obviously, the prohibition spell on the divine soul had been lifted, so Xiaoduo's heart immediately relaxed by half. Yes, in this space that he did not understand at all, he had one more trump card. Hai Hunshan sat up with his face covered in dirt. However, he kept his head down and became a taciturn gourd. Before this, he had also been wearing this face. However, he was talking and laughing with a calm expression. After the reason was explained, he felt that his face was too embarrassing that the 10 of them sat in a circle. After the life-or-death battle, just now, everyone instinctively felt closer to each other. Even if there was still hostility in their bones, in this secret space, it seemed that the hatred outside was not so important. So, you're not going to just sit here and do nothing. We can't just wait. Shaja said, how about we have a sword competition? As he said that, he took out the gold soul sword. So Xiaoduo was not interested. I don't want to fight with you. I'm afraid that if I use a little more strength, I'll cut you into 8 pieces. You can't be put back together. Puff! The others all snorted in unison. Shaja's cold face turned into an eggplant. So Xiaoduo sighed. Originally, I could have killed you happily. However, you made such a scene. It's not fun to kill you. Even if I want to kill you, I'll have to go out first. I still have a good conscience. Forget it. Let's just drink and chat while we wait. Hai Hunshan said, I have good wine here. Sha Hun explained on the side. Since Hai Hunshan became ugly, he became very interested in wine. He also did a lot of research. He once collected some bones of high-level tiger demons for a period of time and soaked them in wine. It's said that the effect is very good. Hai Hunshan was furious. What do you mean by after becoming ugly? Can't you shut your mouth? Although he was scolding, he took out the tiger bone wine. When the tiger bone wine was taken out, the others also took out all kinds of dishes. There were all kinds of exotic delicacies. They were all delicious. Even a stingy person like Zhuo took out 10 chive pancakes and generously gave one to each person. I'm telling you, this is made by my mother. It's very delicious. You should feel honored. Do you understand? The 9 juniors of the Alliance immediately twitched the corners of their mouths. We took out heavenly treasures to eat, and you only took out 10 chive pancakes. They're not even chives from spiritual plants. They're just ordinary chives. You actually want to pretend and brag. This is too much. Chapter 1001. Zhuo said angrily, "What kind of look is that? You don't know the value of this chive pancake. This chive pancake." Zhuo glanced at everyone. Priceless. One of a kind. Extremely precious. The 9 of them snorted. It was just a chive pancake. No matter how much he bragged, it couldn't reach the heavens. After everyone took a bite, they found that the taste was really good. At least it had a different flavor. Zhuo, who gave out 9 chive pancakes, felt that he had paid a price. Therefore, he began to eat and drink with a clear conscience. He finished more than 5 kilograms of tiger bone wine and ate all kinds of heavenly and earthly treasures to his heart's content. He felt that he had taken advantage of them and was very happy. Zhuo didn't know that this chive pancake was indeed very precious. The heavenly king of the right had almost risked his life and sent many priceless treasures to her, but she had only agreed. He hadn't even kissed her yet. Therefore, to be able to eat this chive pancake was really a rare opportunity. Shah Han narrowed his eyes and ate the chive pancake. The more he ate, the more delicious it became. He seemed to ask casually, "So, your cultivation method is very special." Zhuo immediately became alert. This guy is trying to trick me. Even if he's not Bai Yin, it doesn't mean that he's not narrow-minded. Zhuo gulped down the wine and ate the meat. He squinted and said, "It's a so-so. 3rd in the world. I don't know what cultivation method it is. Can you tell me?" Sha Jiao asked directly. "My cultivation method is amazing. It's Jiutian shitty." Before Zhuo could finish, the 9 of them raised their hands together. They immediately begged for mercy. "Stop bragging. We won't ask anymore." They couldn't trick him. Shah Han had expected this. Although he was full of doubts, he also knew that it would be more difficult to get information out of Zhuo than to kill Zhuo directly. He didn't mean to ask, but he was still hoping. As they drank, everyone began to brag. After all, they were a group of young people. Their bragging was like dust that covered the world, and their bragging filled the sky. As he blew, he waited for the inheritance palace to take shape. The palace became more and more solid at a speed visible to the naked eye. Finally, it was about to take shape. When I was 17 years old, I went out to sea to fish. I steered a yacht and held a fishing rod. After 50 kilometers out to sea, I suddenly felt my hand sink. A big fish took the bait. Hai Hanshan bragged as he drank. "Guess how big that fish is?" "How old?" everyone asked. "I don't know how big it is, but this fish dragged my yacht, which was more than 10 tons, more than 3,000 kilometers into the deep sea. In the end, it broke the string and ran away." This is a true story. The last time I went to Hainan, Lu Xiaohui told me that he rented a yacht to go out to sea to fish. A big fish dragged the yacht, which was several tons, for more than 200 kilometers. When he said this, he looked serious and nervous. He even sighed and said that it was a pity that the fish ran away. I almost believed him. It's really big. He really knows how to brag. Everyone laughed. As they were laughing, they suddenly saw a flame shoot up into the sky from the other side of the sky, burning the entire sky red. Then, the sound of a bell rang. Donged. Everyone felt their souls suddenly sober. When they turned to look at the source of the sound, they saw that the inheritance palace had completely taken shape. It was majestic in this world. "The palace has taken shape. Let's go in." Haiyan Shan said. It said that everyone who enters the palace will face an independent palace. What you can get depends on your own fate. The 9 people of the sorcerer tribe knew the whole story very well, and Haiyan Shan still said it. Obviously, it was for Zhuo to hear. Zhuo nodded, indicating that he understood. "Zhua," Kami no Su said seriously. "After you enter, If there are signs of bloodline rejection, it's better for you to come out as soon as possible. The witch ancestor's inheritance has always been very important to the bloodline. Even if you don't get anything, you'll still have your life intact. Even if you don't get anything, 10% of each of us will be yours. There's no need to take risks. Xiaoduo nodded again. Take care. Everyone cupped their hands and immediately stood up, striding toward the entrance of the palace. Everywhere they looked was a sea of fire. Only the path they were walking on seemed to have a suitable temperature. It even felt like a willow wind was blowing on their faces. In front of the palace, the two doors were suddenly wide open. Inside, a long corridor could be vaguely seen. Even further away, everything was fiery red. I'll go first. Hai Shan laughed heartily as he strode forward and entered the palace. Everyone watched with wide eyes as Hai Shan walked through the door and walked into the long corridor. Then he disappeared. It was strange and inexplicable. However, Sha Hun and the others didn't feel offended at all. They entered one after another and disappeared one by one. Xiaoduo carefully observed the traces of people entering. These people were probably arranged according to age. The oldest one entered first, then the second one. The order seemed strange, but in fact, it was not messy at all. In the end, Sha Diao, who was last in line, also went in. At the entrance, only Xiaoduo was left. Xiaoduo carefully observed the palace. He faintly felt that there would be trouble if he went in. However, he was unwilling to not go in, thinking left and right. He was in a dilemma. Finally, he braced himself and walked a few steps forward. Just as he reached the entrance of the palace and was about to poke his head out to see if there were any clues that he could follow, suddenly, a large fiery red hand stretched out from nowhere and grabbed Xiaoduo. With a whoosh, it pulled him in. "Spare me," Xiaoduo screamed. This big hand didn't appear when it was the first 9 people, but when it was his turn, it actually dragged him in such a rude manner. He was afraid that it had ulterior motives and was up to no good. Bang. Xiaoduo was like a dead pig thrown in the middle of the palace. Xiaoduo got up with a grunt. He raised his head and saw that there was a cloud of red smoke that was taking shape. A face appeared faintly, and then a body appeared. A tall and sturdy figure, wearing a red robe, sat on the main seat of the palace, looking down at Xiaoduo with a complicated look in his eyes. This was the soul of the inheritance that was left in the palace thousands of years ago. It knew nothing about the tests and battles outside. Only when people entered the space of inheritance would this remnant soul be activated. This kid in front of him was very strange. His bloodline was clearly not of the Wu people, but his cultivation method had traces of the Gong clan. However, the natal cultivation method that he was using was completely different from the water element. It was a fire element cultivation method that was of the same origin as his own. This kid actually cultivated both fire and water and was compatible with 2 elements that were difficult to reconcile. What's more, the fire element cultivation method seemed to be not much weaker than his own fire energy. But after observing for a while, he found that there were even stranger elements in this kid's body. There was also the flow of yin and yang, but it could balance yin and yang on its own. In other words, this kid's body was of the same origin as fire and water. Yin and yang coexisted, and the 5 elements rotated self-sufficient. Although Zhuwu Zhurong was only a remnant soul that couldn't even leave the inheritance palace, he was still knowledgeable. But he couldn't understand how this kid, whose cultivation was as weak as a piece of paper, could have such a strange cultivation method. Human race? You're really human. That figure's eyes were fixed on Xiaoduo. Xiaoduo's divine soul felt like it had entered a nightmare. He felt like he was being sucked into that pair of eyes. His divine soul rippled, unable to control itself. A mountain-like pressure forcefully invaded his soul, as if it had entered an uninhabited land. He could see everything clearly. How could a human learn the cultivation method of the Gong clan? Are you a descendant of the Gong clan? Xiaoduo nodded instinctively. I don't know the details. I just learned. What Gong clan? The figure sighed softly and said in disappointment, Back then, my brother Xiaobai fought a great battle. But it caused the decline of the shaman tribe to begin. It went out of control, and they were defeated one by one. Could it be that after so many years, the two brothers will have a common successor? He looked at Xiaoduo up and down with a complicated expression for a long while, and finally sighed. He didn't say anything, and didn't do anything for a long time. Suddenly, his mind was shaken again. Let's leave it to fate. How much you can get depends on your ability. He let out a long sigh. Xiaoduo only felt dizzy, and then fainted. Kid, you're just a shallow ant. You don't deserve to see me die. Right after Xiaoduo fainted, the figure began to dissipate bit by bit. Right at this moment, a figure suddenly flashed into appearance within the hall. This person wore a yellow robe, a crown on his head, a tall figure, and an extraordinary appearance. However, his entire body naturally flowed with an extraordinary aura of might that could reign supreme in the world and reign supreme in the starry sky, causing him to stand out from the crowd. He just stood there, but he made people feel that he was the only ruler of this starry sky for thousands of years. The yellow-robed man looked at the figure that was about to disappear and said, "Zhu Rong, are you leaving already?" The figure paused and smiled bitterly. "Dong Wang, I knew that your divine consciousness was here as well. The so-called leaving behind my legacy was ultimately just empty words. How could you let it go completely? After all, we are enemies." "Brother Zhu Rong, you think too much." The yellow-robed man, who was Dong Wang's mind, said, "But back then, after you and I fought, when you were defeated and died, I decided to let your remnant's soul pass on the inheritance. Suddenly, I had a whim, and I felt something. It seemed to be a little bit of karma at that time. That's why a strand of my mind followed. It really has nothing to do with Brother Zhu Rong's inheritance." Dong Wang smiled warmly. "How can people like you and I not know that at our level, if we have a whim, it's not a small matter? There must be karma." Zhu Rong's remnant soul laughed mockingly and said, "Then, can you see the karma of His Majesty Dong Huang's whim? Maybe it's on this kid." Dong Wang turned to look at Xiaoduo and said, "This kid, even though his cultivation is as thin as paper, he's not ordinary." Chapter 1004. Ioyo, don't break it. Xiaoduo picked it up with a pained heart. Picking up the book, he saw that there was no title on the cover page. There was only a ball of fire that looked like it was burning. But for some reason, he couldn't open a single page of the book. Xiaoduo tried again and again. He was cautious at the beginning, but in the end he used all his strength. But it was like a mayfly trying to shake a tree. He didn't gain anything. Xiaoduo knew that his cultivation was low, so this result wasn't surprising. But he had already obtained a mysterious book, but he couldn't do anything about it. Wasn't this too disappointing? Suddenly, he had an idea. He immediately activated the power of the Flaming Sun scripture. The ball of fire on the cover page suddenly changed and shone brightly. As the power of the Flaming Sun scripture continued to pour in, the ball of fire became brighter and brighter. In the end, it gradually became like the sun in the sky, making people unable to look at it directly. And at this moment, the first page of the book finally opened. What is fire? I am fire. I'm not a controller of fire, nor am I a user of fire. It is because I am fire myself. Cultivators must remember this. This was the preface. But with just these few words, Xiaoduo suddenly felt enlightened. I am fire, and fire is me. Not bad, not bad. This is the true essence of cultivating fire elemental skills. No wonder he is the #1 fire elemental master in history. No wonder he is the king of all flames in the legends. Xiaoduo was full of admiration as he continued to read. Elemental fire arts. Unsurprisingly, this was a skill. It was the supreme fire elemental skill that Zhu Rong cultivated. As Xiaoduo read, he compared it with his own Flaming Sun scripture. He found that there were many similarities. But as he continued to read, he found that there were too many areas that were much more profound than the Flaming Sun scripture. Of course, this was reasonable. Uncle Nan Shuai, Nan Zhengxian had given him the Flaming Sun scripture. It was one of the best fire attribute scriptures in the world, and could be called the best fire attribute scripture in the world. This was absolutely irrefutable. But when compared to the lifetime inheritance of the fire god Zhu Rong, the lord of all fires and flames, there was still a huge gap. But no matter what, the Flaming Sun divine art had provided Zhuo Xiaoduo with the most stable foundation of a fire attribute cultivation technique. It allowed him to understand this inheritance technique and seamlessly inherit Zhu Rong's primordial fire determination technique. It's so good, it's so well written. Sigh, at least it's better than mine. After roughly flipping through it, Zhuo Xiaoduo stored it in his space ring as if he had found a treasure. His current cultivation was still shallow. Being able to understand it was one thing, but to actually practice it was another matter. This kind of super secret manual had to be studied repeatedly before he could really practice it. Even if the essence of the attributes was the same and could be seamlessly linked, changing cultivation methods still required a process. And now was obviously not the time. After reading the secret manual, Zhuo Xiaoduo planned to use his divine sense to open the jade slip again. But after thinking about it, he decided to give up. He didn't need to look at it to know that it must contain Zhu Rong's lifetime of cultivation comprehension. With his current divine sense, how could he withstand the infusion of the insights of an expert like Zhu Wu? Zhuo Xiaoduo, who had always been the best at seeking advantages and avoiding disadvantages, would never take such an unnecessary risk. Especially in his current situation, Zhuo Xiaoduo was very afraid that if he was careless, even if he didn't die, the inheritance palace would disappear at the right time. Wouldn't he become a lamb waiting to be slaughtered? It's better to wait until I go back and find someone with a high cultivation to protect me. Only then can I comprehend in peace. With this protector, and this protector having the ability to wake me up at any time, I'll be safe. Now that I'm in the enemy's camp, there's no need to take risks. This thing can't be tried casually. Zhuo Xiaoduo's mind was still very clear. He knew what to do and what not to do. Immediately, he put away the jade slip. Then, he began to carefully search the entire palace. With Xiao Long leading the way, Zhuo Xiaoduo really searched like a locust swarm passing through. He didn't miss anything at all. As mentioned before, most of the palace was made up of illusory energy. The real things that could be hidden in it were naturally the good things that Zhu Rong had collected in his lifetime. So Xiaoduo found a box, then another box. Later, when he opened an inconspicuous space ring, his eyes widened. Damn! It was filled to the brim with the heart of the scorching sun. No, this should be something of a higher level than the heart of the scorching sun. Each and every one of them was shining with a dark red light. It felt as if the whole world was going to explode. When Zhuo Xiaoduo saw this, he was so excited that his body trembled. There were more than a few thousand inside. There were at least tens of thousands of them. If the heart of the scorching sun was a pure fire attribute geocentric astral soul's jade, then these in front of him were pure fire attribute hearts of stars. The entire space ring was half filled with these things. Further inside, there was a layer of seal. That meant that there were definitely other good things inside, but he didn't know what they were. Although the heart of the scorching sun and the new fire attribute heart of the scorching sun were of a higher level than the heart of the scorching sun, it was still too high. It was far beyond what Zhuo Xiaoduo could use at the moment. However, these fire attribute hearts of the stars could be replaced with the Tower of Annihilation as a new heat source. Zhuo Xiaoduo was originally worried that the heart of the scorching sun from before had dried up, and there was no better replacement. Now, pillows were delivered to him just as he was about to doze off. Moreover, there were many pillows delivered to him at the same time. How timely! Zhuo Xiaoduo quickly searched the entire palace. However, the process was more like wherever Zhuo Xiaoduo went, the place collapsed after taking out the things inside. It would naturally collapse without the support of fixed energy. As Zhuo Xiaoduo took out more and more treasures, the palace collapsed faster. However, the energy that collapsed was not wasted. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a stream of light and joined the sea of fire in the distance. The flames grew higher and higher, and a figure slowly rose from the flames. It was an indomitable giant. As the flames grew higher and the temperature became hotter, the flame giant also became bigger and bigger. If anyone who knew about Zhu Wu Zhu Rong saw this, they would definitely be in disbelief. Because the legendary Zhu Wu Zhu Rong had a fiery temperament and would explode at the slightest provocation. As long as there was a slight offense, he would fight with the heavens and earth. He would even fight with other Zhu Wu without exception. He would never admit defeat in his life. He had been domineering all his life. His face was always full of anger. However, at this moment, the divine image of Zhu Rong that rose from the sea of fire looked indifferent. There was a hint of reluctance in his eyes, a hint of longing, a hint of guilt and nostalgia. However, there was more relief. It was relief that he could leave with peace of mind. But then, the flame giant slowly rose into the air. When it reached a height of several hundred zhang, its feet were still on the ground, and it didn't actually lift itself up. This was the Zhu Rong ancestor of Magus saying goodbye to this world for the last time. No one would have thought that Zhu Wu Zhu Rong, who was rumored to be neutral like fire, fighting with the heavens and earth, and causing trouble crazily all his life, would use such an extreme relief. It was as if he had been enlightened. There was no hatred, no anger, no complaints, no unwillingness. It was just indifference and relief. He left just like that, taking his leave. On the other side, Zhao's black figure was still flashing freely in the flames, its little sharp beak bit by bit, sucking the essence of the innate true fire into its mouth. Its eating speed was so fast that it was like a fleeting shadow. From afar, one could even see thousands of three-legged golden crows flying wantonly in the sea of fire. Xiao was very excited and cherished it. It was determined not to let go of any essence of the fire element. Even if he couldn't digest it himself, he had to store it all in his own space. This was Zhu Wu's innate true fire, the purest innate fire element. If it missed this chance, it would not have another chance. Although Xiao was confused and did not know what it was, he knew that it was good stuff and could not let go of it. As for the good stuff in the palace, Xiao did not care about it. Yes, his mother was inside. Naturally, his mother would pack up all the good things inside and take them away. After that, she would even share the profits with him. My mother received it. Can you give me some? The essence of the innate, true fire outside had started to burn, but it was impossible to take it all away. It would be a waste if it did not take more. Xiao naturally did not know what kind of opportunity it had encountered. Even when the demon clan ruled the heavenly court and dominated the world, the 10 golden crow princes of the demon clan only mastered the power of the sun's innate true fire. None of them could touch Zhu Wu's innate true fire, let alone cultivate it. At that time, the war between the demon clan and the demon clan was earth-shattering. How could Zhu Wu reveal his cultivation method, an innate true fire, to the princes of the demon clan, who were his mortal enemies? Therefore, what Xiao was in contact with now was a great opportunity that even Demon Emperor Jun and Dong Wangtai did not have. Moreover, this fortune would cease to exist along with the departure of Grand Shaman Zhurong. Xiao felt that as it ate, even the feathers on its body became brighter and brighter, shining more and more. The originally pitch-black feather was now like a bright moon disk, sparkling and translucent, like a divine object. Xiao ate crazily with its little sharp beak. Gradually, it felt that its neck could not take it anymore. It had eaten too many times. It did not know how much it had eaten and how much it had stored. In any case, his innate storage space was about to be filled up. Even Xiao herself felt that it was inconceivable. This is how I usually eat. I'm a crow, and I eat my food bit by bit. What kind of natural ability is this? Today, my neck could not take it anymore because of eating. I have lived for a long time. Would he get cervical spondylosis after eating just one meal? If I really get cervical spondylosis from eating too much, I will definitely become a legend. the first three-legged golden crow who got cervical spondylosis from eating too much. Chapter 1005. Xiao felt a little conflicted. My neck feels really uncomfortable, but this energy is too good, too pure, and too delicious. Even if I get cervical spondylosis from eating this, I am willing to do it. Pain and happiness. No worries, no worries. I will gladly endure this hardship. Xiao continued to fly with all her might, and continued to crazily eat on the other side. The Huang sword quietly floated in the air amidst the flames. It was like a whale sucking in the sea of flames, sucking in the boundless fire energy into its body. Wherever it passed, the flames that were originally extremely bright and blazing would gradually dim. But once the flames in a certain area dimmed slightly, the Huang sword would immediately change its location. It floated in the air, and every time it moved, it would cover a certain area. At first, it was only a few zhang in radius, but as it absorbed the energy, it gradually recovered, and the area it could cover while floating in the air gradually expanded to several li. The boundless sea of flames was like a flood that had found a place to pour, rushing into the Huang sword's body. The Huang sword was different from Xiao. Xiao was absorbing the essence of the innate true fire, which was the essence of the fire element. On the other hand, the Huang sword was not able to quickly digest the essence of the innate true fire because its body was much weaker. Previously, it had inexplicably merged with Zhu Rong's power, so it could not quickly digest the essence of the innate true fire. On the other hand, the scattered sea of flames was easier to absorb. The current situation of obtaining great benefits made the Huang sword feel unprecedentedly happy. It was in high spirits and felt that it was quickly recovering. If this kind of fire can continue burning like this for a year, I will be able to replenish all my energy here, and I will be in perfect condition. I will be able to recover the heavenly power that I had when I accompanied the Empress to mend the sky. At that time, even if I meet Boss Zhong, I will dare to threaten him. If you hit me again, I will fight back. If I face Boss Sword, I can also happily say, I'm about to catch up to you, ho-ho. Don't hit me now. You can hit me again in the future. It will be more satisfying. That's what Xiao Duo was looting inside, while Xiao and the Huang sword were looting outside. All three parties were trying their best to keep the loot on their bodies. All three parties knew that if they missed this opportunity, there wouldn't be another one. Moreover, this opportunity wouldn't last for long. These three fellows, one greedy one after the other, crazily plundering. Naturally, Hai Hun Shan and the others also entered the palace. In fact, the palace that Hai Hun Shan and the others entered was exactly the same as the one that Xiao Duo entered. Hai Hun Shan was the first to enter, and he also found a lot of good things. Hai Hun Shan was more careful, and from the moment he entered, he started to touch the first place he saw. This space couldn't exist for too long, so he had to be quick. Hai Hun Shan's mind was very clear. He was not confused at all. In a few minutes, Hai Hun Shan felt that he had struck gold. He had already collected more than a dozen treasures that could only be found in legends outside. Then, there were more than 20. More than 30. Hai Hun Shan became more and more excited and more proud of himself. Struck gold. This time, he really struck gold big time. The others were about the same. Sha Hun and the others were basically in the same state of excitement. The only one who was different from the others was Sha Hun. After Sha Hun entered, the moment he opened his eyes, he rushed straight to the throne. The places that he had just entered must have been searched by those fellows who had entered first. I have to start from the depths to reap the rewards. Although it seemed like it was divided into 10 palaces, and everyone could enter, and after entering, one person would occupy the entire palace. However, in reality, there was still only one legacy palace. The total number of good things would not change. Only with the passage of time, the treasures would gradually decrease until they were completely taken away. The process in between, if described in clearer terms, would be, starting from Hai Hun Shan who entered first he entered at 15 o'clock in the afternoon. Then, at this time, Hai Shan had a complete palace, and nothing inside had been touched. But when Hai Shan started to collect the things inside, for example, if the time of the second entry was 15:01:20, then in this 1 minute and 20 seconds, the test item that was taken away by Sea Spirit Mountain would no longer exist in this palace, and would not be produced out of thin air. As for the rest, if you took one of them, when I found this place again, it would already be gone. Although it looked like the same palace, in reality, it was already different. Therefore, the 9 people of the Umno Alliance and Zhou Xiaoduo all had something to gain. But in essence, it was equivalent to these 10 people tearing down the Legacy Palace at the same time. Zhou Xiaoduo was the last to enter, so theoretically, he should have obtained the least things. However, due to the special design of the throne, many people tried to decipher the secrets of the throne and wasted a lot of time. There were originally 4 books and jade slips inside, but now there were 2 sets. Zhou Xiaoduo inexplicably triggered the mechanism and obtained the books and jade slips. Hai Shan and Sha Han, who were in the other palaces, also opened the other side of the armrest. The final result was that Sha Han obtained a book and Hai Shan obtained a jade slip. When the 2 of them turned around to look for the other side of the armrest, naturally, there was nothing left. So Xiaoduo had already taken it. Similar situations happened to the others, but the rest of them could only open the mechanism of the armrest, but after opening the mechanism, it was already empty. The 10 people continued to search for treasures, but at the same time, they accelerated the process of tearing down the palace, and at the same time, released the energy that formed the palace. As more and more energy was released, it also meant that more and more treasures were taken away. The lifetime collection of the first generation Zhu Wu was divided among the 10 people. When they reached the back of the palace, the speed of the palace's collapse became faster and faster. None of the 10 people were willing to be left behind, and everyone began to work hard. Sha Jiao and Sha Yu, who were left behind, were anxious as they watched the palace collapse in front of them. All the good things were taken away. It was too backward. We can't waste any more time in the same place. Let's go straight to the front. Sha Jiao thought in his heart, and then suddenly rushed forward. On the other side, Sha Yu also had the same idea. They were indeed siblings. Although they had obtained enough things, who would complain about having more of such dreamy treasures? Even if there were 10 times or 100 times more, they would definitely not complain about having more. But when the 2 of them rushed to the front, they found that the palace had already started to slowly collapse from top to bottom. Then, the entire palace slowly collapsed just like that. There's still the foundation. Sha Yu lowered her head and dived down, but the foundation had already started to turn into fire energy and started to dissipate. Who is this? Why is he so fucking professional? How can he collect it so quickly? In such a short period of time, the foundation has been taken away? Sha Yu finally couldn't hold it in and started to curse. As the noble daughter of the 12 great clans, Sha Yu rarely got angry. The aristocratic temperament that had been passed down for tens of thousands of years had already been deeply ingrained in the descendants of the great magi. But now, she really couldn't hold it in anymore and kept on cursing. It was really too infuriating. Who is this? To be able to do such a professional job of smashing and robbing the foundation. If you're so capable, why don't you just go to heaven? Why are you fighting with us laymen? Could it be Hai Shan? Or that darn Sha Han? Or was it the treacherous Tu Yunwan? Anyway, it couldn't be Zhou Xiaoduo. Zhou Xiaoduo was a human. It was already good enough that he wasn't immediately crushed into smithereens after entering Zhu Wu's space. No matter what, it couldn't be done to this extent, right? This was a consensus. Everyone knew that Zhou Xiaoduo had the bloodline of the humankind after all, and the Zhu Rong ancestral magus had always paid attention to the purity of the bloodline. This was Zhu Wu Zhu Rong's space of inheritance. No matter what, it couldn't be taken away by the human race. Even if Zhou Xiaoduo wasn't beaten to death, it was impossible for him to obtain too much from this space of inheritance. The The foundation collapsed very quickly. At the same time, the rest of the palace began to crumble as well. Soon, everything collapsed, including the palace above. Boomed just as the foundation turned into flames. The 9 disciples of the great shaman clan in different timelines and spaces cursed at the same time. Who? That darn person. This is too fucking professional. At least leave some behind. It's too clean. In front, there seems to be an intact part of the wall that collapsed. It should be. What the hell? Who did this? Everything under my feet has been emptied. Who the hell is this? The 9 of them were flustered and exasperated to the extreme. This was because everyone had agreed not to be the first to move the foundation. They all knew that there were good things. However, digging the foundation was equivalent to destroying the foundation of the palace. They couldn't do anything about it. Even if they wanted to move, they had to collect what was above first. If they destroyed the foundation first, the part of the palace wall above would collapse and disappear. That would be troublesome. By the time everyone finished collecting what was above, they would already be at the other end of the palace. At that time, everyone would turn back and start collecting the foundation together. In this way, everyone would have a harvest. Anyway, the foundation was here. It couldn't run away. However, what they didn't expect was that when they were more than half done, someone actually started to attack the foundation. Aren't you afraid of being smashed to death, you bastard? Tu Yanxiao cursed loudly. He was mad. Just now, he had seen a treasure and had reached out to grab it. However, all of a sudden, he had grabbed nothing but air. This was too infuriating. Since it had been seen, it must have been there when he saw it. Then, in this 1/100th of a second, who could be so fast? It was fine if this kind of thing happened once or twice. However, Tu Yanxiao had encountered it more than 90 times. Tomorrow is the Lantern Festival. I wish everyone a happy Lantern Festival. Chapter 1006. After being disappointed so many times, Tu Yanxiao felt like his liver was about to explode from anger. This is simply inhumane. What a fucking unlucky bastard. It's either Hai Hanshan or Shahan. When I get out, I won't forgive these 2 bastards. Just as the 9 of them were cursing, Zhuo walked out of the palace. Well, there was no palace anymore. He had come out from the foundation. Who else could do such a wicked thing other than him? Zhuo. Who else could it be but me? When it comes to looting treasures, who can compare to me? Zhuo. It's a pity that not all of it is mine. I only took a large part of it. It's a pity. Zhuo deeply felt that it was a fly in the ointment. These disciples of the Alliance are too greedy. Don't they know that greed is the source of all disasters? This is outrageous. How dare they steal my things? Although I didn't get a lot, at least I got something. Zhuo was very dissatisfied. If I got a little more, I could have filled the space ring. Why didn't I get more? If the Flood Witch heard this, she would beat him to death. Ever since I got that life ring, I've never filled it to the brim, not even 1/10 of it. You've already filled it to the brim now. What else do you want? It's a space ring full of treasures, not demon beast meat. And you even got Zhu Wu Zhu Rong's space ring. What else do you want? What else do you want? After going out, Zhuo instinctively adjusted his expression. The expression on his face changed from complacency and excitement to depression, disappointment, and indescribable blankness. It was an indescribable blankness that was full of sorrow but had nowhere to speak. Just by looking at this expression, one could tell that this kid must have come back empty-handed in the space of inheritance. He might have even been beaten up. Otherwise, why would he have such a lifelike expression of despair and regret? He looked at the sea of fire with a melancholy expression. His eyes were red, and he squeezed his eyes from time to time. He looked like he was about to cry, but couldn't. Or maybe he was trying hard to hold back his emotions. I am very sad, but I want face. I can't cry. I can't lose face. Not long after, the entire palace turned into energy and dissipated, completely dispersing into the surrounding sea of flames. The 9 descendants of the Alliance also walked out one by one. Coincidentally, as if they had discussed it beforehand, everyone's mood was not very good, and they all had an expression of not getting anything. Hai Hanshan frowned as soon as he appeared. His face was filled with disappointment and unwillingness. In short, he looked very upset. Shahan also narrowed his eyes and sighed softly. From time to time, he would turn his head back with a disappointed expression. Kami no Su's face was filled with unwillingness. Sha Yu's face was filled with disappointment, unwillingness, and sadness. Shaja's face was filled with self-blame and regret. Tu Yinxiao sighed and pulled at his hair. His face was filled with regret, which was unbearable to look at. Yin Ziki turned his head back 3 times with every step. The unwillingness on his face was practically overflowing. Only Sha Jiao looked happy and high-spirited. Obviously, he had gained a lot. Just by looking, one could tell that even if the previous 8 people did not gain nothing, they had gained very little. Only Sha Jiao alone was the big winner of this battle. He had gained a grand slam. The ugly daughter-in-law had to meet her parents-in-law eventually. The 10 of them gathered outside, and in the sea of fire in the distance, that indomitable giant was slowly rising. Out of the 10 people here, 9 of them had melancholy expressions on their faces, and one of them was as happy as if he had just married a new wife. So the Xiao Duo looked at the 9 people of the Wu people with a disappointed and sad expression. His voice was a little hoarse. You guys gain a lot in Zhu Wu's land of inheritance, right? Gain a lot. Gain a lot? Ha ha. Congratulations, congratulations. Hai Hanshan sighed sadly. He was so conflicted that his intestines were about to be knotted. He rolled his tongue and habitually smacked it on his nose. He said, Indeed, it's a little disappointing. This is completely different from what I imagined. Gain, Sai. Sha Hun, you gain a lot, right? Sha Hun shook his head and sighed, a bitter smile on his face. As the saying goes, cleverness leads to the downfall of cleverness. There are many smart people in this world, and there are even more clever people. I didn't think I would be like this. I was tempted by wealth and hoped for a fluke. Sigh, but if I say now that I really didn't gain much, would anyone still believe me? Tu Yinxiao said, I also didn't expect that the great Zhu Wu's palace of inheritance would have so few treasures. Tu Yinyin also said, yeah, it's really disappointing. Sha Yu said, can you guys stop complaining? Compared to you guys, I'm probably the one who gained the least. I didn't even get anything. Shaja said, I don't even know what to say when I get out. It's too embarrassing. I only had one super big opportunity in my life. I entered Zhu Wu's palace of inheritance, but I only gained so little. What can I do with it? Kami no Su hesitated for a moment, but still sighed. I really want to say that my gains are barely satisfactory. But the truth is not satisfactory. It's so embarrassing. Sigh. Yanziki said, I was just a little bit away from being bald. Sha Jiao looked at each of them, his face full of shock, doubt, and disbelief. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore and glared. What do you all mean? You didn't gain anything? How? How is this possible? I clearly saw so many treasures, so many fantastic items. If it wasn't Zhu Wu's palace of inheritance, where else could there be such treasures? Where else could there be such treasures? You guys aren't lying through your teeth, are you? The more Sha Jiao thought about it, the more he felt that these people were not telling the truth. He suddenly became indignant. You can't be so shameless. The 8 of them turned their heads in unison and looked at Sha Jiao's face with burning eyes. All kinds of emotions flashed in their eyes. Sha Jiao, could it be that you're gain a lot? That can't be right. Think about it carefully. Sha Jiao glared and said, in such a good place, there are treasures everywhere. Of course I gained a lot. Why? You guys didn't gain much? How is this possible? Impossible, absolutely impossible. I clearly saw so many good things, but when I went over, they were already gone. You guys must have taken them away. You guys are lying. Even if not all of you are lying, there must be someone who isn't telling the truth. That's right. The 8 of them stared at Sha Jiao in unison. For a moment, they all had the urge to rush over and strangle him alive in their hearts. This bastard, isn't he Sha Jiao? How did he suddenly become smart? Should this be called great wisdom appears to be stupidity, or great stupidity appears to be wisdom? After sighing with emotion, they all felt inexplicably dejected. He is Xiaodiao. He is really a Xiaodiao. No matter if it is great wisdom appears to be stupidity, or great stupidity appears to be wisdom, he is still a Xiaodiao. If you try to reason with Xiaodiao, you will only be looking for trouble. You won't be torturing others. You will only be torturing yourself. For a moment, the 8 of them stopped talking to Xiaodiao. They couldn't speak anymore. If they did, they would only be shaken off more by this guy. Hai Hanshan looked at Zhuo Xiaoduo with a heavy face and said, Zhuo, I didn't expect that in our Alliance's space of inheritance, you would still be the biggest winner. This Zhuo, I'm speaking sincerely from the bottom of my heart. Shahan said, yes, Zhuo is indeed Zhuo. In fact, my generation is comparable to a fake. Everyone praised him with all their might. Their flattery was like the overflowing Yellow River. It was unstoppable, rolling in and reverberating in the air for a long time. Zhuo is wise and powerful. Zhuo must have gained a lot. Zhuo must have returned with a full load. We are really ashamed of our inferiority. We are far inferior. Zhuo Xiaoduo listened to everyone's praises. He looked like he was about to cry. His expression became more and more emotional. He shook his head and said gloomily, don't say any more. Don't say any more. What's wrong? Zhuo Xiaoduo was speechless. It really is the Hall of Inheritance. The bloodline requirement is really too unfair. What's wrong with you? How is it unfair? What's wrong? The moment I entered, I fell asleep. What else do you want? Zhuo Xiaoduo's face was full of disappointment, and his eyes were red. I've been sleeping like this until now. When I woke up, the palace was collapsing. If I wasn't alert, I would have been swallowed by the sea of fire. This is simply too fucking bad. Zhuo Xiaoduo was indescribably angry. He said hatefully, if I had known this would happen, why would I have gone through so much trouble to go in, just so that I can sleep in it? I'm helping the enemy. I'm helping the enemy. How can I face Father Xing Hun again? Everyone looked at each other. Zhuo Xiaoduo's expression was too real. There was no falsehood in it at all. It was completely from the bottom of his heart. There was no acting at all. If this was still considered acting, then it could only be said that this guy's acting skills were too good. All the major awards, movies, television dramas, stage plays, they all owed him a Best Actor or 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 Best Actor awards. You really didn't get anything? Xiaodiao was stunned. Looking at Zhuo Xiaoduo's face, which was so depressed that he was about to explode with rage and was about to cry, he couldn't help but comfort him sympathetically. Actually, we already guessed that Zhuo wouldn't be able to get anything, because it was written in the ancient records that the bloodline rejection was the first choice in the land of inheritance. Even if someone coincidentally entered the land of inheritance, it would be difficult for him to get anything. For example, Zhuo only slept for a while and didn't suffer any backlash. He was already very lucky. So, Zhuo, we already expected that you would return empty-handed. Zhuo Xiaoduo's eyes widened. You mean, you already knew? Then why didn't you say so at the beginning? Everyone looked embarrassed. With Zhuo Xiaoduo behind his back, he looked at Xiaodiao with his knife-like eyes. Chapter 1007. Why don't I find a chance to finish him off with a knife? Xiaodiao was really Xiaodiao. Xiaodiao had gone too far, what Xiaoduo said with grief and indignation. If you had told me earlier, I wouldn't have gone in. I didn't want to suffer this humiliation and disappointment for no reason. Everyone was getting more and more embarrassed. They really wanted to see him make a fool of himself. Xiaodiao said, Zhuo, how can you be so stupid? You contributed the most to us being able to open Zhu Wu's inheritance. Before everything is set in stone, they won't let go of you, the best tool. In fact, using your power to open the land of inheritance while you can't get anything from a land of inheritance is in the best interest of our Alliance. So Xiaoduo said sadly, really? Xiaodiao nodded. Of course. Speaking of gains, I feel that I have gained a lot and am very satisfied. But compared to them, they must have gained more than me. Otherwise, It wouldn't make sense at all. Each of them should have gained much more than me. Shah Hun and the others looked straight at Sha Jiao. When did this guy become so wise all of a sudden? Every word was on point. But what was he trying to do by saying that? Couldn't he just keep it in his stomach and not say it out loud? Otherwise, they would just beat him to death after they went out. Hai Hun Shan and the others looked at Shah Hun, Sha Jia, and Sha Yu speechlessly. Their eyes had the same thought. Is this the Shah family? He's really too wise. Your Shah family actually has such a wise person and a pig teammate. The future is just around the corner. This was no longer the second time. He understood everything, but he didn't understand who was inside and who was outside, who was on his side and who was his enemy. So Xiao Duo admitted that he was helping the enemy, but that was at most unintentional and passive. But Sha Jiao was blatantly speaking in favor of the enemy. Why are you all acting so weird? Why do you keep winking at me? Sha Jiao was very puzzled. Instead of thinking about those crooked ideas, let's hurry up and show the harvest. We promised Boss Suo before that everyone would give him 1/10 of the harvest. Words are like the wind. It's too late to regret. He said with a heavy accent, I know you don't want to give it to me, but I want you to give it to me. There's no use winking at me. A promise means a promise. Everyone, slap. Sha Yu gave herself a hard slap. I was wrong. Why did I wink at him? Such an idiot. The way he looked at him was simply, it's my fault. It's all my fault. I was blinded by my own lard. How could a bastard like him understand winks that not only did he not understand, but he also wanted to strip him clean? Xiaoduo's spirits were lifted when he heard this. He said, it's my bad luck that I didn't gain anything. It's fate. However, I'm very comforted that you're willing to give me 10% of your gains. I didn't help you in vain. You didn't call me boss in vain. I believe that as the direct descendant of the Wizard Alliance, you won't go back on your word in addition to the great gains you've made. For a moment, everyone was silent. They all looked at Hai Hun Shan and Sha Han. The two of you, who were known as the most scheming, had to come up with an idea. So Xiao Duo continued, we've been through life and death together. No matter what our original positions were, we've been through life and death together. Although it's inevitable that we'll be enemies in the future, in this space, we're still brothers. As the boss, I don't want to take too much and cause more karma. I'll just take a little as a token. Then he looked at Sha Jiao and said, Sha Jiao, you can do it first. I trust you. You said that you gained the least, so you must have gained the least. You probably didn't gain much. Just give us a token later. Zhuo Xiaoduo spoke quickly and clearly before Sha Hun and Hai Hun Shan. Hai Hun Shan's face suddenly changed. He hurriedly said, Sha Jiao you. Sha Jiao laughed excitedly. Zhuo, you look down on me too much. I said that my gains were not as good as theirs. That's true, but the number of treasures in Zhu Wu's treasure house is not small. Open your eyes wide and take a good look. Before he finished speaking, he had already taken out his space ring proudly. With a swipe of his hand, he poured out the contents of his space ring. Poured out. Poured out. The corners of the other 8 people's mouths twitched instantly. Their faces were full of cramps. Their faces were extremely twisted and ferocious. As far as the eye could see, the ground was full of mysterious light and treasure aura. Endless spiritual aura rose densely. It was colorful and magnificent, like pearls bouncing on the ground. There were hundreds of treasures competing with each other. Obviously, Sha Jiao was right. His gains were really good. The other 8 people looked at Sha Jiao's face like dead fish, and then looked at the treasures on the ground. This guy, actually, really took them all out that we really don't understand. What are you showing off for? You're right. Compared to everyone else's gains, you're indeed the one with the least gains. You're very wise. You've already made the judgment. Too smart. At this moment, the 8 people all had an illusion. Was this guy pretending to be a fool, pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger? He knew that he had the least gains and was jealous of others' gains. Then he would drag everyone down with him. But after all, it was just a thought, because this result would cause everyone to suffer heavy losses, even more than Sha Jiao, but it would benefit Zhuo Xiaoduo. In the end, it would harm the overall interests of the Umno Alliance. If Sha Jiao really had such foresight, he would have taken this step sooner or later. Therefore, Sha Jiao was still Sha Jiao, and only Sha Jiao. Sha Jiao's face was full of pride. Obviously, he was very proud of his gains. He said, I only found these. Innate fire essence. I found a total of 250. There's also Master Zhu Wu's notes on the cultivation of the Wu people. And there are 30 frigid ice essence, 7 earth essence souls, 6 wind essence pearls, 6 gold essence pearls, 6 wood essence pearls, and 6 wood essence pearls. Only I didn't find the wood essence pearls. It's a pity that I can't gather all 5 elements. Sha Jiao said, according to the agreement, I'll give Zhuo 1/10 of the gains. I won't give you the notes. So, I'll use 1 earth essence soul, 1 wind essence pearl, and 1 gold essence pearl each. I'll replace them. Frigid ice essence souls, 3 for Zhuo, 25 innate fire essence pearls. Sha Jiao counted seriously. He pushed all the gains to one side and finally formed a small pile. 7 earth essence souls, 6 wind essence pearls, and 6 gold essence pearls. These were less than 10, so he gave 1 to Zhuo Xiaoduo. It was obvious that he wanted to make up for the missing parts of the notes. Sha Jiao honestly finished the distribution and said, so Zhuo, what do you think? I, Sha Jiao, am a straightforward person, but I'll definitely do what I promised you. Zhuo Xiaoduo took a deep breath and praised. Sha Jiao, you're really good, a real man. You're a man of your word. This really shows me the elegance of the seniors of the Umno Alliance. You're a man of your word. You could be considered a hero. I, Zhuo Xiaoduo, will remember this friendship. Zhuo Xiaoduo rarely approved of someone from the bottom of his heart, but Sha Jiao did it. Although what he did, in Zhuo Xiaoduo's eyes, was stupid and unwise to support the enemy. If it were him, he would never do it. But this sincerity, this boldness of keeping a promise, was enough to move Zhuo Xiaoduo. Because of this, Zhuo Xiaoduo made up his mind. If he met this guy in the future, he would know his limits. Sha Jiao's face lit up. He said, keeping a promise is the moral integrity of the ancestors of the Wu people. Even if we, the descendants of the Wu people, are unworthy, we can't disgrace our ancestors. He said righteously, I'll give you as much as I deserve. I, Sha Jiao, won't do things like embezzling, stuffing my own pockets, and destroying the integrity of others. I believe that my brothers won't do it either. Zhuo Xiaoduo fiercely nodded his head. That's right. The descendants of the sorcerer tribe are trustworthy. They are honest and trustworthy. They definitely won't do such shady business. On the other side, Hai Hun Shan, Sha Hun, and the others couldn't wait to grab Sha Jiao, skin him alive, and beat him to death. You're awesome. You talk about integrity. If we don't do it, we're not good people, right? But think about it carefully. Now that they've left Zhu Wu Zhurong's palace of inheritance, Zhuo Xiaoduo is no longer Zhuo. He's an enemy. You fucking do what's wrong with giving him less? If he gives Zhuo Xiaoduo less, will Sha Jiao die? Will he? She actually dared to make fun of us again and again. Everyone knew in their hearts that Sha Jiao wasn't mocking them at all. Those words were indeed what he thought in his heart, and then they came out of his mouth. Since that's what he thought, then that's what he said. But in a situation where everyone had the intention to keep the information to themselves, every word and sentence of those words became the most vicious and sharp mockery. Everyone's expressions didn't look too good, but Sha Jiao didn't care about that. After he quickly assigned himself, he even considerately pushed Zhuo Xiaoduo's pile towards Zhuo Xiaoduo's side. He said considerately, Zhuo, you don't have to be embarrassed. This is what you deserve. You helped us open Zhu Wu's palace of inheritance, so this is what you deserve. Not to mention, we've already promised you beforehand. Sha Jiao said naively, I'm not afraid of offending you, Zhuo. Actually, I didn't want to give it to you. But since I've already promised you, there's no turning back. I know that you must feel embarrassed now, and feel ashamed to accept it like this. But you've indeed contributed a lot, so it's reasonable for you to receive something in return. Hai Hun Shan and the others rolled their eyes in unison. Embarrassed? Zhuo Xiaoduo would be embarrassed. Chapter 1008. How could a scumbag like Xiaoduo feel embarrassed when he received your gift? The word embarrassed had probably never existed in his dictionary since he was in elementary school. Thank you, Brother Xiaojiao, for your kindness. So Xiaoduo said with emotion. I have to say, even if we are on different sides, I still want to be friends with you. In modern society, there are too many deceitful things. Honest people like Xiaojiao, who keep their promises, are too rare. He sighed. Modern society has developed to the present day. Everyone is calculative and blinded by greed. The teachings of our ancestors and the fine traditions have long been lost. Today, to be able to meet someone as honest and trustworthy as Brother Xiaojiao again, I feel that I am not alone in my path. I feel very happy. So Xiaoduo gave him a thumbs up. Good job, Xiaojiao. Xiaojiao's face lit up. It's nothing. We, the disciples of the Umno Alliance, are all such good men. So Xiaoduo nodded repeatedly with a face full of agreement. Of course, of course. Xiaojiao put away his things with a face full of pride. He looked up at Hai Hunshan and the others who were dumbfounded and asked curiously, Why are you all looking at me like that? Hurry up, I'm done. It's your turn now. Why are you all standing there like idiots? Hurry up, it's been so long. Now that we've left Zhu Wu's land of heritage, the troops chasing after Zhua will be here soon. Why are you all dawdling? Why are you all looking at you like that? Hee hee, we want to eat you alive, bite by bite. Xiaojiao, this name of yours is really fucking correct. Every word of Zhua Xiaoduo's was a bait, leading him to say what he wanted to hear. And Xiaojiao cooperated very well, not missing a single word. He really trapped all of us in there. In fact, even if we wanted to stall for time until people came, we couldn't show off any more treasures. Now, because of you, if we don't take them out, we'll feel sorry for our ancestors and the Wu people. He was speechless. Sha Hun and Hai Hunshan looked at each other and saw the speechlessness in each other's eyes. A fool and a woman had dragged the two great think tanks into the ditch, unable to climb out. This was probably the case now. Hai Hunshan sighed. This time, there was no need for him to pretend. He was frowning from the bottom of his heart. From the bottom of his heart. He couldn't help but take a step forward and say, My harvest is indeed slightly more than Xiaojiao's. Xiaojiao said in surprise. You've got more than me. Why did you have that expression on your face just now? Really, Hai Hunshan, it's not good to be too greedy. Shouldn't you thank the heavens and your ancestors for getting these? Hai Hunshan said fiercely, Yes, that's right. So, I'm thanking your 8 generations of ancestors now. Xiaojiao scratched his head and murmured, Why does it sound like you're scolding me? Hai Hunshan ignored him and took out the treasures one by one. Soon, there was a big pile on the ground. After the distribution, Zhua Xiaoduo got 47 connate fire essences, 15 frigid ice water essences, 2 earth elemental souls, 2 gold spiritual pearls, 2 gold spiritual pearls, and 2 wood elemental spiritual pearls from Hai Hunshan. Sha Jiao didn't get any of these. There was another pile. Then it was Sha Hun's turn. Sha Hun was also very happy. His harvest was slightly less than Hai Hunshan's, but the share he gave was about the same. Then it was Cami No Su. She also looked at Xiaojiao with a drooping face. She took out her share and gave Zhua Xiaoduo a share. Then it was Tu Yin Xiao, Tu Yin Yun, Sha Yu, Shaja, and Yin Zikida in the end. The share they gave to Zhua Xiaoduo was a little more than everyone else's. Among the 9 people, except for Sand Eagle, who still looked comfortable and relaxed, the other 8 people all looked as if they had eaten shit. It was needless to say how ugly their expressions were. Thank you, everyone. I didn't expect all of you to be so honest and keep your promises. You are indeed the sons of the Wu people. Your words are like the wind, and your words carry weight. Zhua Xiaoduo's face was full of sincerity. This guy didn't seem to have any conscience at all. At the beginning, we agreed that you would give me 1/10 of your harvest, but we didn't say how much I would give you, right? The reason why I pretended that I didn't get anything was for your sake. I didn't want you to feel uncomfortable and fall sick. Hai Hunshan coughed and sighed. Of course. Since we agreed in advance, we won't go back on our words. We Wu people may not be as cunning as you. We humans and the Tao League. But when it comes to honesty, we are number 1 in the world. Of course. So So Xiaoduo beamed with delight. Over there, the enormous body of Zhu Rong, ancestor of Magi, which was entirely composed of fire power, had already reached thousands of zhongs high. With an inexhaustible sense of relief and reluctance, he rose into the sky, seeming to have no attachment at all. Just as his feet left the ground, a voice rang out from behind him. Within a radius of several thousand miles, all the people of the Umno Alliance who saw this scene, no matter if they were ordinary people or warriors, all knelt down sincerely with tears in their eyes. "Farewell, Master Zhu Wu! Farewell, Master Zhu Wu!" The huge body finally started to move towards the sky. Shihai, Wu Du, and Zhu Meng, the three senior magi, all knelt in the clouds, their eyes full of passion. "Farewell, Master Zhu Rong." Behind them, Lei Chantian also bowed slightly, his face full of respect. "Farewell, Zhu Wu Zhu Rong." No one could be disrespectful to this senior Zhu Wu, who had once wreaked havoc in the past and present and left behind countless legends. The huge figure rose gradually without looking back, getting further and further away from the ground. The heat of the flaming valley, as Zhu Rong's figure left, started to spread outwards. The fire energy that was originally condensed and gathered in a certain area was about to go out of control that the sea of fire rose endlessly. The 10 people who were still in the central area were sitting quietly, waiting for the moment to go out. Hai Hanshan and the others did not speak. Their gazes were intentionally or unintentionally fixed on Zhuo Xiaoduo, their hearts full of complicated feelings. After they went out, they would immediately go back to cultivate in seclusion, hibernate, and break through again. However, although Zhuo Xiaoduo had gained a lot of benefits, it was inevitable that he would fall into the most concentrated encirclement again. There was no need to guess. Anyone could guess this result. After waiting for such a long time, it was estimated that the number of people who had the burning order outside would be at least 10,000. Even more were the number of high-level warriors from the Umno Alliance who were waiting for Zhuo Xiaoduo outside. Even if there were not hundreds of thousands, there would be at least hundreds of thousands. There were also millions of soldiers who had completely sealed off the path back to the astral souls. If Zhuo Xiaoduo wanted to go back alive, it was simply impossible. Yes, he was strong and tyrannical, invincible among those of the same level, and could even kill those of a higher level. But so what? As long as Zhuo Xiaoduo showed up, no one would dare to fight him head-on. Everyone who saw him would self-destruct at the first moment. If there was a comparison, it could be said that on the path back to the astral souls, Zhuo Xiaoduo would have to go through at least tens of thousands of atomic bombs before he could go back. You, Zhuo Xiaoduo, are only at the god-reigning level after all. Can you withstand it? That was absolutely impossible. No matter how talented you were, how could you survive in the face of such a sea of people who were indiscriminately self-destructing all over the world? Zhuo, take care of yourself on the way back. Hai Hanshan was silent for a long time before he sighed and said, "Actually, I sincerely hope that you can go back safely." "Yes, Zhuo. I've always felt that you shouldn't die from self-destruction like this." Sha Hun sighed and said, "If there is a day when we meet again and become enemies, an enemy like you should be beheaded on the battlefield with real swords and spears." Zhuo Xiaoduo rolled his eyes and said, "What a nice sentence you said. Thank you." Everyone couldn't help but laugh. But as they laughed and laughed, their laughter turned into sighs. Just now, they gave all the things to Zhuo Xiaoduo without hesitation because they lamented that Zhuo Xiaoduo wouldn't live for long. Looking at Zhuo Xiaoduo, who was about the same age as them, or even much younger than them, and who was about to enter the Death Gate again, everyone's feelings were complicated. Why did a genius like you come to the Umno Alliance? Such a purely suicidal behavior didn't seem like something Zhuo Xiaoduo would do. Everyone sighed and tacitly stopped talking about this matter. Zhuo Xiaoduo sighed and said, "There is still some time before this realm reconnects with the outside world. Since you called me boss, I will read your faces as a souvenir." He felt that it had been a long time since he had gained luck points. Although he still had enough luck points on hand, who would complain about having too many luck points? After getting so many treasures from these guys, it wouldn't be right if he didn't give them some benefits. Although Xiaoduo didn't have a lot of conscience, he still had some. When the 9 of them heard this, their spirits were lifted and they were full of interest. I've heard about the story of Master Zhuo's divination of astral souls. Hai Hanshan said, since Zhuo is so interested, we naturally want to see it. So Xiaoduo smiled and nodded. Then, he focused his power on his eyes and looked at Hai Hanshan's face. Then let's start with you. Hai Hanshan subconsciously slapped the tip of his nose with his tongue. He was a little nervous. It was mainly because he had seen Zhuo Xiaoduo's reputation as a fortune teller many times in the information. He knew that Zhuo Xiaoduo was really skilled in this aspect. Now that it was about to happen, how could he not be nervous? Your physiognomy. Zhuo Xiaoduo was stunned and said, your physiognomy. Forget it. Let's start with Shahan. I wish everyone a happy Lantern Festival today. I will continue to write. Later, when my wife drives over, I will go back to my hometown for the festival. Chapter 1009. Hai Hanshan was stunned. What? What's wrong with my face? This isn't your true face. Zhuo Xiaoduo was speechless. You don't even know your face. Your entire body is not how you should be. My physiognomy focuses on the person's face. How do you expect me to look? This Chan Sheng's saint robe is completely isolated from the mysteries of heaven on your body. Hai Hanshan smiled bitterly. So that's how it is. With this Chan Sheng's saint robe on your body, very few people can see through your fate. This is actually a good thing. Furthermore, this Chan Sheng's saint robe also has the intention of protecting you. Zhuo Xiaoduo sighed softly and said, Hai Hanshan, are you sure you have really offended that senior Chan Sheng? His so-called punishment for you is actually a form of love, and a very special kind of love. Hai Hanshan's eyes flickered and said, I have indeed disturbed his cultivation, but he is magnanimous and has his own judgment. I understand. Zhuo Xiaoduo said, he must have left you some other words, right? Hai Hanshan said, yes. He left some words. What? Hai Hanshan was silent for a long time and said, Chan Sheng said at that time, the toad robe will protect you, and you won't turn back unless you meet the Kuan Pong. If you don't see a dragon or a phoenix in this life, you can stop fighting until you reach the heavens. Zhuo Xiaoduo coughed and thought, this Chan Sheng's words are even more confusing than my judgment. This ability to deliberately mystify things is worth learning. Gao Zhang. The first 2 sentences were understandable, but the last 2 sentences were simply shrouded in fog and had no beginning or end. So Xiaoduo coughed and said, Senior Chan Sheng's judgment of Brother Hai is indeed full of goodwill. Not only would it ensure the success of half of one's life, it would also point out the way to protect one's life in times of danger. Brother Hai only needed to remember that when he reached a certain height, if he encountered a strong enemy that he could not match, he must not act rashly. He must know how to turn back and escape. Naturally, he would be able to escape. Also, there's a great opportunity in life. If you can encounter it, you can ensure that you have no worries for the rest of your life. But if you can't, when you reach a certain height, you will reach the end of your life. You can either live in seclusion for the rest of your life, or, as what Xiaoduo said, but that should be a long time in the future. At least for the time being, you don't have to worry. Hai Hanshan smiled and said, I feel the same way. It is vague and out of reach. It makes one unable to make sense of it. I might as well not think too much about it. If you did not mention it today, Zhuo Xiaoduo laughed and said, when you really encounter it, you will naturally be enlightened. Right now, everything is just speculation. It is hard to come to a conclusion. That's true, that's true. Hai Hanshan skipped over. Next was Shahan. So Xiaoduo looked at Shahan, Kami no Su, Tu Yin Xiao, and the rest. Finally, he looked at Shadiao. He could not help but sigh in his heart. The luck, fate, and future development of these 9 people were not weak in any aspect. Moreover, there were no signs of them dying prematurely. The only one with a slightly worse fate was Tu Yunyan. There were faint signs that she would die prematurely. As for the others, Each and every one of them had the potential to soar into the sky. This is too good, isn't it? Xiaoduo was really puzzled by this result. If Sha Hun and the rest fate were a little stronger, they would almost be able to catch up with Li Chenglong and Long Yuxing. Were the descendants of the Umno Alliance all so awesome? If Sha Hun and the rest were all people with great luck, then were the other descendants of the Umno Alliance the same? How many people were there with great luck like them? There were just a small group of them, right? However, Xiaoduo still said what he could. First, he talked about the past. Then, he looked forward to the future and gave a few words of advice. But just this alone was enough to make the 8 people cry out in surprise. Too accurate. I was indeed. You can even predict that I made a big mistake when I was 8 years old. That's amazing. You can also predict that I lost my yang when I was 15 years old. This. Shaja's face was red, but he still exclaimed. I only liked one person. Cough. Shayu's face was red. But so many years have passed. That person was just a guard. How could it be? This is not too accurate. It's like peering into the past, predicting the present, and seeing the future. That's right, that's really too amazing. After hearing this, the 8 people were all shocked by Xiaoduo. They were unable to control themselves. Sha Hun squinted, but there was also uncontrollable shock and admiration in his eyes. He said, "So, I'm very curious. How can a person like you, who can see through fate, put yourself in such a situation? Is it because a doctor can't treat himself, and a fortune teller can't see his own fate?" This inadvertent sentence touched Xiaoduo's sore spot. He almost cried out loud. He sighed deeply and said, "Do you think I want to? I was set up. What happened? Tell us quickly. Let's all be happy." The person who set me up was my father's old enemy. He was very powerful. He was the one who sent me to the Umno Alliance. I'm so angry. Xiaoduo was so melancholy that his intestines were in a knot. You can't imagine the situation when he threw me here. How could such a thing happen? That person's means are really despicable, but also really powerful. Everyone was already shocked when they heard this. After thinking about it carefully, they felt that this matter was very strange. What kind of enemy would do such a thing? If they had some kind of deep-seated hatred for Xiaoduo's father, wouldn't it be easier to just kill him? Losing a beloved son was already the most painful thing in life. Why did they have to throw him to the Wu people's headquarters? People like Hai Hun Shan and Sha Hun couldn't help but think deeper. Xiaoduo's strength wasn't that great compared to the high-level combatants, but his father's enemy was able to bring Xiaoduo to the Umno Alliance's territory without anyone noticing. This was a very powerful move, and they didn't know if that enemy was still in the Umno Alliance's territory. If they left after throwing Xiaoduo, then things would be fine. But if they were watching from the sidelines, then this person's strength would be unimaginable. It had to be known that at this moment, there weren't only the people in the Burning Order, many of the Umno Alliance's itinerant cultivators, a large army, and many Flying Heavens Dao integration stage or even higher experts. Although they couldn't attack Xiaoduo, they could constantly remind everyone of Xiaoduo's current location. And with so many high-level combatants, they couldn't find that person. That person's strength must be terrifying. If they thought about it from this, then wouldn't Xiaoduo's father's strength also be very terrifying? Although Xiaoduo's background information showed that his parents were ordinary people, and he only had an elder sister with an extraordinary cultivation level. Judging from today's situation, Xiaoduo's background was probably not simple either. In the end, no matter who killed Xiaoduo, they would have made an extremely difficult and unfathomable enemy for no reason. This series of analysis was extremely terrifying. They didn't understand it, but it was still very intriguing. After thinking about it for a while, they couldn't help but shudder and sigh. That's more or less what happened. Sigh. Xiaoduo recounted the events with a melancholy expression. He was extremely speechless. This place. To be honest, in my original plan, I didn't plan to come here even if I was a Flying Heavens cultivator, let alone a Flying Heavens cultivator. I had to be at least a Dao integration stage cultivator before I could come here. Who would have thought that I would be thrown here when I was only a Flying Heavens cultivator? This is basically a trap. The 9 of them all broke out in cold sweat upon hearing this. Only a Dao integration stage cultivator would dare to come here. Your cautiousness, or rather, your love for your life, is probably unparalleled in the entire 3 continents. I really hope you can return safely. Sha Hun and the others said this sincerely. Haiyan Shan said, "So, what do you think the future of our continent will be like?" Sha Hun and the others all turned to look at Haiyan Shan and pricked up their ears. The future of the continent? Zhou Xiaoduo was dumbstruck. What do you mean? I mean, the safety of the continent. Haiyan Shan took a deep breath. In your opinion, how many years will it take for the demons to return? Zhou Xiaoduo was silent for a moment before replying. I really can't tell right now. My cultivation is far from that stage. This really wasn't an excuse. Zhou Xiaoduo's manifestation divine ability hadn't improved at all. At the very most, he could only see 3 months of good fortune. Once he saw someone with a higher cultivation base, the benefits would be limited and the consequences would be severe. In the end, it was all because he was too weak. Haiyan Shan sighed and said, "In my opinion, that day isn't far away." Sha Hun nodded silently. Speaking of this matter, everyone's faces were gloomy and their hearts were heavy. Now, the 3 continents seem to be fighting each other, and the war is getting more and more intense. But in fact, the higher-ups of all 3 sides are consciously training their troops. Haiyan Shan said, "This practice is nothing more than preparation for the future return of the demons. It can be seen that no side has much confidence in the future war. They can't fight against the demons with their own strength. In fact, compared to the Demon Alliance's strength now, there's no comparison at all. And there's not much time left for us to grow." Haiyan Shan sighed deeply. So, from this point of view, I don't want Zhuo to die in the Umno Alliance. Because in the future war against the demons, Zhuo's fortune-telling ability is really too useful. But now, we're still in a state of life and death. We want to, but we don't have the strength. Sha Hun sighed. Besides, even if the demons return, the hatred between the astral souls and the Wu people that has lasted for tens of thousands of years, how can it be resolved? Both sides have too much blood on their hands. The so-called alliance is just a thought. At this point, everyone's sighed. There's no need to be so pessimistic, Zhou Xiaoduo said. The demons also don't have 3 heads and 6 arms. They also have 1 nose and 2 eyes. Sigh. It's really hard to say. Haiyan Shan and the others shook their heads. Many demons have 3 heads and 6 arms. It's not like they don't have more. The number of eyes and noses is also not fixed. Don't be blinded by a single leaf and your thinking is fixed. Zhou Xiaoduo subconsciously sweated. Chapter 10:10. As they chatted, Zhu Rong's remnant soul finally disappeared completely. The ground shook slightly for a moment. Then, a rumbling sound suddenly came from the depths of the ground beneath their feet. It seemed that countless torrents were surging at an unknown depth underground. The Red Sun Mountain Range, the holy land for fire elementalists, will probably cease to exist from now on. Haiyan Shan and the others sighed heavily. The surrounding flames suddenly burst into flames. At this moment, the intensity of the fire had reached its peak. Swoosh! Huang's sword and Xiao flew back. Everyone's eyes widened. This is... Before they could say anything, 10 beams of light had already descended from the sky and covered 10 people. This was the end of Zhu Wu's land of inheritance. There was no time for them to ask any questions. Originally, they did not understand Huang's sword and Xiao and wanted to ask, but it was already too late. Everyone's hearts were instantly filled with the melancholy of their impending separation. This melancholy was very special. In the end, they had to return to being enemies. They could not live under the same sky and would not rest until one of them was dead. However, this situation had really come to an end. Their brotherly relationship had come to an abrupt end. Zhua, take care. Take care, Zhua. We will go back into seclusion after we leave. We won't cause you any more trouble. Take care of yourself, and return to the astral souls safely. See you again. Everyone cup their hands. If we meet on the battlefield in the future, don't show any mercy. Because we won't show any mercy either. Take care. A long rainbow-like light flashed. Xiaoduo felt his body suddenly rise from the ground. He only had time to say one last parting sentence. I won't show any mercy to you either. He only had time to say this sentence before he was pulled up from the ground by a huge gravitational force. The following sentence, I hope we don't meet on the battlefield, was choked in his throat. Of course, no one else could hear it. 10 beams of light soared into the sky. The 10 of them were separated into 10 different directions. They were shot out like rockets, and no one knew where they ended up. This was Zhu Wu Zhurong's final protection for his successor. He did not want anyone to find out where his successor had gone. Outside, countless Umno Alliance warriors were kneeling on the ground, gazing at the direction where Zhu Wu Zhurong had disappeared with great reverence. Even the 3 senior magi were doing the same, with their faces covered in tears. This was Zhu Wu's charm. This was the charm of a true expert. During this period of time, Zhurong's display of power and might is where we are heading. Although we didn't obtain anything, we were able to see the true path ahead of us, the strength that we should possess. Seeing the 10 beams of light soar into the sky, the 3 grand shamans and ancestor devil flew up together. Xiaoduo was within the 10 beams of light. But which one of them was him? Lei Changtian saw that the situation had taken a turn for the better. Naturally, he was secretly delighted. However, just as he relaxed a little, he immediately became anxious again. In this beam of light controlled by Zhu Wu himself, even he had no way of detecting his grandson's life force. In other words, he had no idea which one was Xiaoduo, and he had no way of tracking him. This time, he had really lost contact with them. If he chased after any one of them, wouldn't he only have a 1/10 chance? Lei Changtian's whole body turned cold. This random teleportation, where did it send my grandson to? The 10 beams of light flashed in the sky and disappeared without a trace. It would be fine if they were teleported to somewhere close to the Sun-Moon Pass, but if they were directly teleported to the back of the Umno Alliance's mainland, then they would really be done for. Whoa, I was wrong. Lei Changtian was dumbfounded. The beam of light's teleportation speed was too fast. He couldn't even catch up with it. He didn't even have a 1/10 chance. On the other side, the Grand Shaman of the West Sea took out his phone and began to issue orders. Attention, there are 10 directions. 3 in the east, 3 in the northeast, 3 in the northwest, 1 in the south, 2 in the west, and 1 in the north. Looking at this speed and Zhu Wu's power, they're about 20,000 miles away from the Red Sun mountain range. Search within the local area immediately. The 9 Wu people's disciples, once you find them, immediately escort them back to the main family to cultivate in seclusion without any delay. If you find Xiaoduo, immediately report to the higher-ups and inform me. Do not act rashly and alert the enemy. Yes, orders were issued one after another in an orderly manner. This order caused the entire Umno Alliance's mainland to be shaken. The subordinates followed suit and acted immediately. As the beam of light gradually disappeared into the distance, the countless volcanoes in the Red Sun mountain range below erupted simultaneously. A huge amount of magma soared into the sky. Within a radius of several thousand miles, the magma covered the sky and the earth. Thick smoke billowed and covered the entire sky. The 99 volcanoes in this realm spewed magma at the same time. Clouds gathered in the sky, and a torrential rain poured down. This was the eruption of the Umno Alliance's mainland. Using this method to send off Zhu Wu Zhurong, who had wreaked havoc in the world for God knows how many years. At the last moment of Zhu Wu's departure, the dojo released all the fire energy in this realm in one go. From then on, no one would be able to obtain any more fire energy in this realm. Zhu Wu's departure was accompanied by a torrential downpour. It was as if the souls of the past and present were crying for him. A legend of a generation, a legend of a generation, had finally come to an end today. There was no trace of him left behind. An indescribable sense of sorrow filled the entire sky. It filled the hearts of everyone in the Umno Alliance's mainland. Many ordinary people and warriors in faraway places didn't know the reason or what had happened. However, they felt an indescribable sadness in their hearts. They wanted to cry for some reason. Inexplicably, tears flowed down their faces. The ancestor god who had fought for the Wu people his entire life. Today, even the remnant of his soul after the battle would completely leave. From now on, he would no longer protect this place. He left in a relaxed and resolute manner. I, Zhu Rong, will only fight in this life. I won't ask for an afterlife. A vigorous and vigorous life was enough. At the peak of the Umno Alliance's flood palace, a figure flashed. The flood witch, who was in seclusion, appeared at the peak of the mountain. She stood there with a solemn expression. Facing the other side of the mountain, she bowed slightly. Lord, take care. From here, she couldn't even see the thick smoke that covered thousands of miles. She couldn't even see the clouds. However, the flood witch knew what had happened. She knew that Zhu Wu, who she had always respected, had left. There was no trace of him left in this world. Although Flood Magus had been cultivating himself with the cultivation method of Gong Gong Ancestor Magus, the fighting method he used was the fighting method of Zhu Rong Ancestor Magus. In particular, the invincible Thousand-Soul Nightmare Hammer was an extreme move derived from the fighting style of Zhu Rong Ancestor Sorcery. The flood which stood on the peak of the mountain. She sensed the indescribable aura between heaven and earth. She sensed Zhu Wu Zhu Rong's earth-shattering departure. She had an indescribable feeling that kept attacking her soul. She felt that the sea of fortune she created was suddenly overflowing at this moment for some reason. It even surged crazily. It overflowed and kept rushing in. In an instant, the flood which felt that she was about to explode. However, a little light suddenly rushed in her mind. She looked up at the sky and took a deep breath. Then, she saw clouds rushing over from all directions like a gust of wind and lightning. One breath. It was just a single breath, but all of the spiritual energy within a radius of 3,000 kilometers was sucked dry in one breath. The flood which straightened her body. Her messy hair fluttered in the wind. Golden light flashed in her eyes. She put her hands behind her back. Suddenly, she raised one hand and said softly, "Slash." A muffled voice suddenly sounded between heaven and earth. It sounded like a response. Slash. The voice of this single word seemed to have resounded from ancient times until now, and it had never stopped. All the Daos in the world, and all the souls in the past and present shouted at the same time. It was deafening. Suddenly, the sky dimmed for a moment. A strong sense of expectation filled the sky above the mountains and rivers of the Umno Alliance. The flood which straightened her body and revealed a faint smile on her face. From her body, a figure suddenly flashed out and stood in front of the flood witch. It was actually another the flood witch. She also had messy hair and a burly figure. She was wearing a green linen robe. Naturally, she revealed a domineering aura that looked down on everything and looked down on the past and present. The two flood witches looked at each other. The flood witch's face was full of warmth and joy. It's been a long time. The flood witch who suddenly appeared responded with a smile. Fellow Taoist, it's been a long time. The flood witch nodded faintly. Fellow Taoist, please wait for a moment. I'm looking forward to seeing your great power. The flood witch who suddenly appeared waited cheerfully. The flood witch stood in the middle of the strong wind high in the sky. Her clothes and hair fluttered wildly. Suddenly, she took another breath and shouted in a deep voice again, "Kill." This time, he didn't stop. Instead, he continued to shout out the words. Fight! Heaven and earth rumbled again. Endless wind, clouds, and thunder gathered above her head and slowly rotated. A huge disk seemed to appear in the sky. It was completely composed of thunder and lightning. It rotated slowly in the air, faster and faster. In a flash, 2 more figures flashed out of the Flood Witch's body like the Flood Witch who suddenly appeared. They also laughed loudly and were full of joy. Fellow Taoist, it's been a long time. Fellow Taoist, it's been a long time. Ha ha. I didn't expect that I would finally succeed today and be able to stand in this world. Congratulations, fellow Taoist Flood. The 3 of them cupped their hands together and congratulated the great Flood Witch with sincere words. Congratulations to the 3 of you. Congratulations to the 3 of you. The Flood Witch's original body also smiled. Her face became more and more rosy, and the aura on her body became more and more peerless. At this moment, even the heavens and earth would take a detour when they saw her and temporarily avoid her. He stood with his hands behind his back and said softly with some emotion, "Thank you, Heavenly Tao. From today onwards, the Wu people finally have the power to fight. We have a trace of power to compete with the demon race. Although it's not much, it's still there. The heavens didn't abandon me. The heavens didn't abandon the Wu people. Thank you." The Flood Witch cupped her hands towards the sky and bowed sincerely. "Thank you." In the sky, muffled thunder sounded, as if it was responding. "Please help me again." The Flood Witch cupped her hands. "My hammer has yet to appear for the 3 of you." Chapter 10:11. In the sky, the huge disk formed by the lightning bolts spun violently, making muffled thunder sounds as if it was saying something. The Flood Witch laughed loudly. Suddenly, she raised her hand and threw the 2,000 soul nightmare hammers, which were famous in the 3 continents and had never been defeated, into the sky and into the disk. She yelled, "Wu people, Chantian, give me a hand. The 1,000 soul hammers appear in this world." She sank her chi into her Dantian and sensed the power of providence that was still rushing toward her. Then, she yelled in a deep voice, "Hammers." Then a muffled boom sounded. The disk in the sky crackled violently, and a 300-meter thick lightning bolt suddenly fell from the sky and covered the Flood Witch's entire body. Then, 2 phantoms of the 1,000 soul nightmare hammers appeared. Then, 2 more phantoms appeared, and 2 more phantoms appeared. Huh! The Flood Witch's original body couldn't help but widen her eyes. Even though she was in the most magical moment of the connection between heaven and man, the Flood Witch was still shocked. "This is not right. I have my original hammers, and now I have 3 more incarnations. 6 more hammers will be enough, including my original 1,000 soul nightmare hammers. I have 8,000 soul nightmare hammers in total. What a simple number. But now, how come there are 4 phantoms of hammers? Including my original hammers, there are 5 of them. There is an extra pair. Heavens, did you make a mistake?" The 1,000 soul nightmare hammers were still spinning in the middle of the lightning pool, and the phantoms of the 8 hammers were being forged in the lightning pool and gradually taking shape. Just as the Flood Witch's face was filled with confusion, the last 2 shadows of the sledgehammers that were not part of the plan also took shape. However, unlike the other 6 sledgehammers, they didn't stay in the same place. Instead, they got out of the lightning pillar and turned into flowing light in the sky. They sped into the sky and flew away. The Flood Witch's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. "What the fuck? These extra hammers aren't under my control? Where are you going?" The shadows of the 2 sledgehammers really disappeared in a flash. Not only was the Flood Witch confused, but her 3 doppelgangers were also confused and in disbelief. This was simply inconceivable. Fellow Taoist, you can actually make a mistake in the process of severing a corpse? What the hell is going on? Could it be that Taoist Brother Flood's true self is actually illiterate? There are 4 of us for pairs of sledgehammers, 1 pair for each of us. 8 sledgehammers are perfectly balanced. Why? Did you have to create a 5th pair and then let the 5th pair fly away? What kind of explanation was that? What was going on? What's more, the pair that flew away, who exactly were they prepared for? The first doppelganger of the Flood, which had already opened its hand and stretched out its arm, ready to welcome the arrival of its life companion weapon. But the 2 hammers didn't even pay attention to it and directly flew away. This doppelganger of the flood, who had stretched out his two arms, suddenly froze on the spot, not knowing what to do next. What happened to the boss? My sledgehammers. Why did they fly away? When the four doppelgangers of the flood, which were all confused and in disbelief, the shadows of the other three pairs of sledgehammers almost got rid of the thunder and lightning one after another, rotating violently in the sky. Then they fell down, and when they fell into the hands of the three doppelgangers, they had already become real. Three pairs of murderous weapons, which were almost the size of a water tank, appeared all of a sudden. It was inevitable that many things would happen in the world. The thunder and lightning in the sky continued to roar, until the original body of the Thousand Souls nightmare hammer finally fell down, like a feather, and fell into the hands of the Flood Witch. The huge thunder disk in the sky started to slow down from its violent rotation, as if it had used up all its energy and started to recuperate. The Flood Witch couldn't bear it anymore. She frowned and looked at the sky, saying, "I only have 3 doppelgangers. What's the reason for the first pair of hammers? Why do they fly away?" Hearing this question, the lightning disk's rotation immediately paused. Then, the Flood Witch seemed to have heard something. She frowned and said, "How is this possible?" But the thunder disk had completely stopped rotating and turned into a dark cloud that covered tens of millions of miles. With a muffled sound of thunder, the entire Umno Alliance, from the south to the north, from the east to the west, started to rain heavily at the same time. In some of the colder regions, huge snowflakes floated down like woolen blankets. All the people of the Umno Alliance, no matter if they were ordinary people or warriors, felt clear-headed and clear at this moment, as if they had understood something. They felt that the road ahead was bright and clear, and there was no obstacle in their way. Those who had injuries, whether it was obvious or hidden, were all healed unknowingly. Those who had illnesses also felt a lot lighter. Many warriors even felt that their bottlenecks had loosened at this moment. Some even broke through directly and advanced to the next level, but they were still in a daze. There were also many geniuses who had suppressed the agitation of their real essence many times. They originally could not suppress their real essence anymore, but now they found that their dantian, which seemed to be full and could not be compressed anymore, had a capacity again. At least they could suppress their real essence once more, or even twice more. Many high-level cultivators who had reached the end of their lives and had signed the Burning Order actually felt that their lives had been extended at this moment. Maybe they could fight for a bit more, and with the increase in their lifespan, they could go one step further. The entire Umno Alliance suddenly fell into a state of thunderous cheers at this moment. It shook the entire Umno Alliance for tens of millions of miles. The Flood Witch stood on top of the mountain and suddenly laughed bitterly. "Is it that little guy who came?" The Umno Alliance changed overnight, and the root of it was actually him, the one with great luck. Before she finished speaking, the Flood Witch stared at the heavy rain. The entire Umno Alliance was filled with vitality because of this. Above the clouds, something seemed to flash past. The Flood Witch suddenly stood up and shouted, "Since you passed by me, why didn't you leave some gifts for me?" When he landed again, there was a huge water ball in his hand. The water ball was as big as 4 or 5 basketballs. It was extremely clear, shining in his hand. Ninth Heaven Spirit Spring. When the Umno Alliance's land was filled with vitality, the Ninth Heaven Spirit Spring, as an innate spirit object, instinctively came to collect some vitality to promote its own evolution. However, the Flood Witch discovered it as soon as it came. Although it tried to escape, the Flood Witch still took away nearly 1,000 pounds of it. This was not a simple case of stealing a chicken without giving up the rice. It was an extremely huge amount. Before this, all the Ninth Heaven Spirit Spring in the 3 continents for millions of years added up together was not enough for this amount. However, the Flood Witch at this moment intercepted it with a stretch of her hand. No wonder there were so many geniuses in the past. It turns out that when one's cultivation reached a certain level, even an innate spirit object like the ninth heaven spirit spring, could be obtained so easily. Before this, I was still too weak. It was a sin to not have enough strength. The flood which put away the ninth heaven spirit spring and then laughed loudly. Today I, the flood, finally have a glimpse of the great Tao. Congratulations, fellow cultivator. The three doppelgangers of the flood, which congratulated at the same time. One of them said, Deity, I'm afraid that our three doppelgangers are not part of the three corpses. May I ask, how did you split us? Why are we like your replicas? It's really different from the legend of cutting the three corpses to prove the Tao. The flood which laughed loudly. Of course it's different. I'm not cutting the three corpses to prove the Tao. He raised his head and laughed. I, the flood, have a clear conscience in all my life. There is no good or evil in me. I only have a heart for battle, a soul for slaughter. I only have one great Tao, and that is fighting. Only fighting. Fighting for a lifetime. Fearless. The three flood clapped their hands and laughed at the same time. Well said, well said. You won my heart. In that case, my name will be Hongzhan, said the flood water, who was the first to be materialized by the doppelganger. The second doppelganger said, Okay, then my name is Hong Sha. Well, the Sha in kill is a bit too fierce. Let's call me Hong Sha. In that case, my name is Hongzhan. The three of them laughed loudly. From now on, I'll work with all of you to protect the Wu people with all my blood. The flood which bowed solemnly. From now on, life and death will only depend on fighting. Everyone, I, the flood, thank you in advance. I'm just being polite. That's how it should be. The three of them laughed. The flood which looked up to the sky and roared. The three of them also laughed. Their figures flashed and returned to the body of the flood, becoming one again. Traceless and traceless. After all, the doppelganger had just been created. It still needed a long time to get used to it. Then it could be said that they could cultivate and do their own things. The flood which stood on top of the mountain and looked into the distance. She murmured, So, you have to be faster. Then she turned her head and looked in the direction where the two hammers flew. She frowned and whispered, Why is that little guy here? He wanted to go and take a look, but after thinking about it, he held back. I'm not going. I'll take responsibility for my own life. Kid, don't die. When the Umno Alliance changed, the Tao League and the Astral Souls also sensed it clearly. Because of the heavy rain, the Umno Alliance's army retreated, which was rare. Everyone in the Umno Alliance felt the infusion of life energy. At this time, none of the Umno Alliance's commanders urged their soldiers to fight with their lives. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. How could they waste it? The Tao League and the Astral Souls that bordered each other also had different weather changes. Originally, the Tao League's territory was sunny, but now it was cloudless. Chapter 10:12. The Astral Souls continent was in a rainy season. However, when the Umno Alliance's continent fell into a torrential downpour, the Astral Souls continent stopped all of a sudden. Then, the rain stopped and the clouds dispersed, and the sky became clear again. The Astral Souls continent was in a rainy season. However, when the Umno Alliance's continent fell into a torrential downpour, the Astral Souls continent stopped all of a sudden. Then, the rain stopped and the clouds dispersed, and the sky became clear again. The sun was shining at an unprecedented intensity. The change was very obvious. It was so obvious that the heavenly kings of the Tao League, who were supervising the battle at the front line, could clearly feel the resentment of the heavens. It seemed to be complaining about something so disappointing, so disappointing. Look at him, and then look at you guys. It was the kind of sour feeling that other people's children had not disappointed them. Although it wasn't expressed in words, it was already on the surface. They really didn't understand what was going on. Why did the heavens and earth move and the universe lose its color? On the other side, far away, Yu Xingqian stood up in front of the secret chamber. He felt the vibration in his godly soul and sighed. He broke through again. He truly stepped onto the path of Tao that no one has ever stepped onto for so many years. Looking at his own hands, Yu Xingqian's heart became more and more gloomy. That path of Tao was something that he probably wouldn't be able to step onto for the rest of his life. Ever since his wife died in the battle, and the explosion that shocked the entire Sun Moon Fortress reached his ears, his life was no longer complete. He didn't have the chance to be complete anymore. Old Zhua, from now on, it's all up to you. Yu Xingqian, the star-plucking monarch, looked expectantly at the secluded cultivation room. Ever since his wife died, Yu Xingqian didn't want to live anymore. His life was no longer complete. The birds that used to fly together were now alone. No matter how long his life was, what was the point? Back then, the woman whose life was intertwined with his was no longer there. Even if I have earth-shattering achievements, what's the use? Who am I going to show off to? Who will be glorified by this? Just to kill people? Just for the reverence of others? No. My achievements have always been for the sake of the person I love. I roam the pugilistic world. I battle the heavens and the earth. I advance bravely. My name shakes the entire continent. I went through fire and water. I fought hundreds of battles. I broke through to the heavenly king stage. I became an imperial emperor. I only did it for the pride in your eyes. You're proud. This is your man. Now, the arrogance in his eyes was gone. It no longer existed. Then even if I become a saint, I won't have a pair of white hands holding a cup of fragrant tea and whispering to me in a soft voice. You're amazing. You've worked hard. There was nothing left. All of his efforts were meaningless. I still exist now for the sake of the future of the astral souls, but for myself, I no longer want a future, and I no longer look forward to it. After the battle, he was no longer in a hurry to go home. After the battle of life and death, when I was covered in wounds, no one would bandage my wounds with heartache. I no longer have a person who can let me release my weakness in front of her. My exhaustion. In the vast world, I'm the only one left. I'm only waiting when one day, when you meet an enemy you can't fight against. When you can't fight against them, you'll turn your own life into fireworks. Just like you did back then, Yu Xingqian smiled bitterly. He felt the shocking aura of his old enemy in the distance. He felt the intense shock in his soul, but his heart was still calm, without joy or sorrow. He took out a bottle of wine from his ring, opened the bottle cap, and drank 2 mouthfuls. The wine flowed down the corner of his mouth, and a nostalgic smile appeared on his face. Wait for me. Wait for me. Old Zhua, good luck. In the secret chamber. The endless smoke, the countless merging. Originally, there were still countless figures moving about, but for some reason, the process suddenly sped up. Almost all of them had disappeared, and now it was finally coming to an end. Zhua Changlu and Wu Yuding didn't choose to keep their appearances before they transformed. Instead, they kept their appearances when they transformed into the mortal world. This was necessary, because the two of them were worried that their son and daughter would feel unfamiliar after seeing them. Therefore, they abandoned their past appearances. No matter how beautiful they were, no matter how peerless they were, they couldn't compare to the familiar image of their parents in their children's eyes. The two of them sat peacefully, not stagnant in the world. Around them, there were still wisps of fog circling, spiraling, and merging into their bodies. That was the aura of their souls, making the final integration. At this most critical moment, the two of them both felt the vibration of the heavenly Tao's soul. The two of them instinctively opened their eyes, feeling the aftershocks of the great Tao. The flood has broken through. Zhua Changlu took a light breath. He has embarked on the final path. The flood, which is worthy of being a hero of a generation. In this life, he should be invincible in this world. Wu Yuding also sighed and said with some admiration, after embarking on the path of the great Tao, he is actually willing to share this kind of fluctuation of the heavenly Tao with his opponent. Just this magnanimity alone makes me ashamed of my inferiority. Indeed, the flood, which is a rare opponent, a rare enemy. Zhua Chenglu said matter-of-factly, but don't forget, he has another identity. He is our relative. You should do this. Wu Yuding rolled her eyes. Hurry up, let's finish the last bit of integration and get out quickly. Our son and daughter must be waiting anxiously. The agreed time should be almost over. Zhuo Changlu wanted to say, "It's already over." But after thinking about it, he didn't say anything. He nodded and said, "Okay, after the integration, I will also give the flood a shock. It's only right to reciprocate." "You're still half a step away." Wu Yuting ruthlessly exposed her husband's pretentiousness. "Originally, you were neck and neck, but the flood took another step and is still ahead of you. But just now, for some reason, endless power of providence suddenly surged in. It's enough to make up for it." Zhuo Changlu was complacent. "Besides, originally, there was a lot of difference. Now that I'm only half a step away, it's also an achievement." "Well, half a step ahead of me, one step ahead of you." Wu Yuting closed her eyes. "Just you wait. Wait. I will wait. I have a son, a daughter, a son-in-law, and a daughter-in-law. Am I afraid of you?" Zhuo Changlu snorted and closed his eyes. But in the end, he still felt a little guilty. He secretly opened a crack and took a few more glances before closing his eyes and peacefully going into seclusion. Thinking of his son and daughter, Zhuo Changlu subconsciously revealed a warm smile at the corner of his mouth. It had been a long time since he beat that kid. He didn't know if he wanted to beat him up even more now. Nian Yin is probably crying when she misses us now. Her eyes are red. That girl just loves to cry. No matter how high her cultivation is, it's useless. She will probably be like this for the rest of her life. Sigh. I should hurry up and finish my seclusion and send a message to the two of them that we are just sitting here and can't move. We are also anxious. At about the same time, Li Qinglong was also frantically looking for Zhuo Xiaoduo. Originally, it was still the holidays, and Zhuo Xiaoduo's disappearance should have been confirmed a few days or even more later. But unfortunately, something happened. As expected, something happened on Xiang Chong's side. Well, to be more precise, something happened to Zhang Xuejuan's Zhan family. After the Chinese New Year, as the new son-in-law who was already engaged, Xiang Chong naturally had to make a trip to Zhang Xuejuan's house. Li Qinglong had always kept Zhuo Xiaoduo's words in mind. He knew that Zhang Xuejuan could be in trouble at any time, so he shamelessly brought Xiang Bing and followed his brother-in-law to his in-law's house. After going to the Zhan family, they were naturally treated well. After staying like this for a few days, they returned to Qianlong together. Nothing happened, so Li Qinglong heaved a sigh of relief. On the way back, Li Qinglong received a call from Yi Changqing, asking him to immediately go and check on Meng Zhongjun and the others who had gone out to train. There was no news from them until now, and they didn't even return home for the Chinese New Year. When Li Qinglong saw that they were about to arrive at Fenghai City, he finally put his heart that had been hanging in the air for a few days back into his stomach. After bidding farewell to Zhang Xuejuan and Xiang Chong, he brought Xiang Bing and went to the training ground where Meng Zhongjun and the others were at. However, not long after Li Qinglong left, Zhang Xuejuan received a call from home, saying that there was great news and asking her to return quickly. The meaning was that there was great news about the bloodline of the Zhan family. Zhang Xuejuan naturally didn't say anything and immediately returned. Xiang Chong naturally followed his sweetheart. The so-called great news was related to a celestial fate. Back then, the ancestors of the Zhan family had formed a connection and received a stick of incense left behind by a celestial. It had been enshrined in the Zhan family's ancestral hall since then. The celestial who gave the incense had said that if the incense burned spontaneously, it would be an opportunity. At this time, all the descendants of the Zhan family had to join in the incense and pray. Then, they would use the power of their bloodline to inject a jade pendant that was left behind together. At this moment, whoever the jade pendant lit up in their hands would be bound by the celestial fate. At that time, a great opportunity would naturally befall them. Not long after Li Qinglong and the others left, a strange fragrance that had been silent in the Zhan family for a long time suddenly rose. It was really strange, and the fragrance spread far and wide. At first, everyone was surprised by the sudden appearance of the strange fragrance and didn't think about the incense in the ancestral hall. After all, this matter had happened too long ago. In fact, most of the Zhan family members didn't even know about this past. When they found the source of the strange fragrance, The elders of the Jean family who knew about it became excited. Then, they naturally gathered all the descendants of the Jean family who were not at home and hurried back home. This involved an extraordinary celestial fate. How small could it be? Jean Shuejuan, who had just left, naturally received this news. As the number one genius in the family, she was naturally summoned back immediately. Chapter 10:13. Don't worry. Jean Shuejuan smiled. Look at me. What kind of a mortal would fancy me? Xiangcheng only felt that the crisis in his heart was getting heavier and heavier. Looking at Jean Shuejuan in front of him, he felt as if he was in a dream or in a misty cloud. That kind of misty, illusory, and unreal. It seemed that at any time she would be blown away by the wind and turn into a cloud. But this woman was clearly his fiancée, the person he loved deeply. Xiangcheng forced a smile and said, "But it was said that you don't have to do anything except practice. There may be many opportunities, but they may not be opportunities. Don't worry, don't worry. How could such a big raindrop fall on my head?" Jean Shuejuan smiled. She kissed Xiangcheng lightly on his face and comforted him. "When this is over, we will immediately return to Fenghai. It won't take long, at most half an hour. I'll be back in no time," she said as if she was comforting a child. "Don't worry. Be obedient and wait for me here." At this point, what else could Xiangcheng do? He could only agree. "Okay, then you must be careful. If you find anything wrong, come back quickly." "Okay." Jean Shuejuan felt Xiangcheng's concern for her. She couldn't help but smile gently. She only felt that her heart was infinitely warm and comfortable. She turned around and strode away. His unusually tall and fit body was still as masculine and valiant as ever, full of vigor and vigor. Xiangcheng only felt that his heart was beating like a drum. Seeing Jean Shuejuan leave, he finally couldn't help but follow her. "You go back." Jean Shuejuan turned around. "No." Xiangcheng shook his head. "Go back. Be obedient." Jean Shuejuan's face was a little red. "You do your thing. I won't disturb you. I'll just watch from aside." Xiangcheng was very determined. Jean Shuejuan bit her lips. Her eyes were filled with shyness, tenderness, and gentleness. Suddenly, he had a feeling that he wanted nothing more. As a woman, with such a husband, what more could she ask for? This life was enough. "When we return to Fenghai, let's pick a date to get married," Jean Shuejuan said, biting her lips. "Ah!" Xiangcheng was overjoyed. Are you serious?" "Idiot." Jean Shuejuan rolled his eyes and turned away. "Is what you said true?" Xiangcheng shouted from behind, his face full of joy. Jean Shuejuan did not answer. "You can't go back on your word." Xiangcheng's face was full of smiles as he walked. "Humph! A gentleman keeps his word," Xiangcheng shouted. "We'll get married when we get back." "You said it." "Shut up. Lower your voice." Jean Shuejuan's face was red. He was unhappy. Many of the Jean family members heard and could not help but roar with laughter. "Oh, oh, oh." Everyone cheered. Jean Shuejuan's face was red. She lowered her head and rushed forward. Xiangcheng grinned and smiled happily. He followed behind and looked into the ancestral hall. He felt that today had suddenly become so beautiful. The surrounding Jean family members also looked at him kindly. Occasionally, two people would come over to tease him, and Xiangcheng would reply with a chuckle. Everyone seemed to be very happy. In the ancestral hall, the descendants of the Jean family kept coming forward to test it. Drop after drop of Jean family blood essence dripped on the jade pendant. However, the jade pendant did not have any reaction. A group of men tried one by one, but no one had any reaction. The Jean family went from their initial ecstasy to extreme disappointment. Could it be that this immortal fate was not fated with the Jean family? Women, even if they could, they would still belong to another family. And this was also the reason why Jean Shuejuan, the number one genius of a Jean family, was placed at the back. Because the men had to be tested first. Jean Shuejuan also understood this point. After all, she was going to get married. Once she got married, she would belong to another family. With her talent and the resources that the family had invested in her all these years, it was already very generous of them to not let her stay at home. All the men had failed. The Jean family members were extremely disappointed. But things had already reached this stage. How could they stop? Hence, they arranged for the Jean family women to continue testing. However, no one could make the jade pendant change until Jean Shuejuan cut her middle finger and dripped her blood on the jade pendant. At this moment, the jade pendant suddenly emitted a bright red light. The red light was very gentle. Even Jean Shuejuan herself was stunned for a moment. It's done. There's a reaction. Everyone in the Jean family was stunned. Then, they cheered in unison. It would be best if there was a man with a mortal fate. But as long as there was someone in the Jean family who could trigger a mortal fate, it was still a great opportunity. It's Shuejuan. Shuejuan has a mortal fate. That's great. That's great. Haha, it's finally done. It's a mortal fate indeed. God bless the Jean family. The inside was in an uproar. Everyone in the Jean family was dancing with joy. Xiang Chong was standing at the outermost entrance. He was an impatient person to begin with, so when he heard this, he couldn't help but squeeze in, wanted to take a look. Only Jean Shuejuan, who was directly involved, faintly felt that something was wrong, because she found that in the red light that suddenly appeared, the jade pendant seemed to have a touch of faint black chi, rising along with the red light. It was just that it was covered by the red light. Those who were not close would not be able to see it. This black aura vaguely made one's heart palpitate, and Jean Shuejuan, who was closest to him, faintly felt that this was very wrong. If it was really a mortal fate, why would there be such an uncomfortable black aura? Just when Jean Shuejuan vaguely felt that something was wrong and wanted to do something, she was stunned to find that the jade pendant had already stuck to her hand. The light seemed to be getting brighter and brighter, but the blood in her body was also continuously flowing into the jade pendant. It was endless, as if there was no end to it. The red light became brighter and brighter. It dyed half the sky red. The cheers grew louder and louder. As the red light became brighter, the black aura also increased. Gradually, it formed a vague door. Inexplicable music seemed to come from the heavens, making people feel relaxed and happy when they heard it. This is immortal music. This is immortal music. The Jean family members were all trembling with excitement. Xiang Chong squeezed in desperately. Let me see, let me see. He had already seen Jean Shuejuan in the red light. She was like a fairy. For some reason, Xiang Chong felt that she was very far away. It was as if Jean Shuejuan was standing in this red light and was separated from him by two different worlds. It was unreachable. He squeezed forward with all his might. He widened his eyes and shouted with a trembling voice, Shuejuan. Shuejuan. How are you? Jean Shuejuan was stunned. Her eyes were a little confused. The cheers of the people around her seemed to come from the heavens. Her consciousness was gradually blurring. It was as if she had forgotten everything. Her body was also a little light. It was as if she was about to fly off the ground and ascend. However, when Xiang Chong's voice sounded, Jean Shuejuan's heart suddenly became clear. Xiang Chong, yes, it's Xiang Chong, that's the voice of my lover. It's him. I want to marry him. I want to spend my life with him. Become an immortal? I don't want to. I want to get married. I want to stay down. Jean Shuejuan struggled with all her might. Suddenly, she finally regained a trace of clarity. In the red light in front of her, the black gas was becoming more and more obvious. The door was already very clear and open. Others still couldn't detect it. But when Jean Shuejuan suddenly regained a trace of clarity, she had already seen a ferocious demonic aura, something that looked like a monster, as if it was going to come out from here, that looked excited and its eyes were shining. It was about to rush out. Jean Shuejuan was horrified. She only felt that all the hair on her body suddenly stood up. She felt that something was wrong. She came to a conclusion. This was definitely not an immortal fate. Then, she suddenly remembered what Xiang Chong said. The gods with Xiaoduo once said that she had a great disaster, but this was not an immortal fate. Jean Shuejuan bit her lips and instantly made a decision. This was an immortal fate. Evil and unorthodox ways. How can I let you have your way? At the last moment when the door was about to form, Zhang Xuejuan activated all the remaining strength in her body. With a clang, she pulled out her sword and shouted. Without hesitation, she cut off her left hand. Using the most extreme method, she resolutely stopped the process of blood pouring into the jade pendant. With a fierce kick, she sent the broken hand and the jade pendant flying. The heavenly music stopped abruptly. The demon that was about to rush out suddenly froze in the door, as if it was solidified. At this moment, a furious roar came from the door. "How dare you, lowly servant!" Xiang Chong had just squeezed in when he saw this scene. He couldn't help but be scared out of his wits. With his eyes wide open, he shouted, "Xuejuan!" Zhang Xuejuan felt that the black gas was like silk threads that had completely tied her up. She couldn't retreat. With all the strength in her body, she shouted, "Don't come over!" The long sword in her hand was thrown out like lightning. With a bang, the sword hilt hit Xiang Chong's chest and sent him flying. Zhang Xuejuan shouted, "Back off! You back off! Everyone back off! Don't come over!" Boom! That red light suddenly spread out and threw everyone away. Then, the black light lingered and spread, and the door was rapidly closing. Zhang Xuejuan panted and looked forward to it. It looked like it was about to close, but at the last moment when the door was about to close, the black smoke turned into a big hand. It reached out from the door and grabbed Zhang Xuejuan. "Lowly servant, you spoiled my plans." With a whoosh, Zhang Xuejuan's blood-stained body was caught by the big black hand. "You are indeed a heroine that only appears once in tens of thousands of years. Just when I was about to succeed, you still spoiled my plans." A ferocious voice gradually disappeared as the door closed, cutting off the hand and feeling the pulse. "You are really bold. Let me see how hard your bones are." With another whoosh, the red light, the black gas, the door, and the source of all the trouble, the jade pendant, all disappeared. It disappeared together with Zhang Xuejuan. A roar came from an unknown space. It was Zhang Xuejuan's heartbreaking roar. "Don't wait for me. Don't look for me." The voice stopped abruptly. Chapter 10:14. The door was suddenly closed. The red light and the black gas suddenly disappeared. Zhang Xuejuan's screams seemed to still reverberate in the air. Only Zhang Xuejuan's severed left hand was left on the ground. The Zhang family members who were cheering until their voices were hoarse were all dumbfounded. What? What was going on? Why did it suddenly? "Xuejuan!" Xiang Chong let out a hoarse roar, rushing forward with all his might. But the door was completely closed. Xiang Chong missed his target and crashed into the offering table in the ancestral hall, breaking it into pieces. "Xuejuan, where are you? Where did you go?" "Ah!" Xiang Chong almost went crazy. Where did she go? Xiang Chong frantically tried every method he could think of, but he was still unable to find any information about Zhang Xuejuan. The only thing he had left was the incense burning in the ancestral hall of the Zhang family. However, after the jade pendant disappeared, the incense had turned into an incomparably foul smell. The Zhang family members were dumbfounded. Wasn't this an immortal fate? Why? Did it suddenly become a disaster? Where was Zhang Xuejuan? Where's the immortal? That music? Where did the red light go? What exactly happened? No one could explain. Xiang Chong did not cry, nor did he go into a daze. He just went crazy, but he forced himself to calm down. He used the knife to stab his arms and legs a few times before he regained some consciousness. "I can't go crazy. I have to wake up. I have to go find her." He broke the burning incense, leaving a small half of it that was not completely burned, and carefully picked up Zhang Xuejuan's left hand on the ground. The jade hand was still warm and soft, as if there were still remnants of her gentleness. Xiang Chong held the severed hand, feeling as if a knife was cutting his heart. He took Zhang Xuejuan's left hand and bid farewell to the Zhang family members. "I have to go find her. I will find her no matter where I go." Xiang Chong quickly rushed back to Fenghai City to find Li Chenglong and Zhuo Xiaoduo. He knew that the only person he could count on to help him was probably Zhuo Xiaoduo alone. Only Zhuo Xiaoduo had made a prophecy in advance. Zhan Xuejuan's disaster. Only Zhuo Xiaoduo might have a way to deal with it. He frantically contacted Zhuo Xiaoduo. However, at this moment, Zhuo Xiaoduo could not be contacted, no matter if it was by phone or any other means of contacting him through the internet. None of them could be reached. Xiang Chong almost went crazy. He could only choose to ask Li Chenglong for help. Xiang Chong was very clear-headed. He knew that his IQ was not high enough, let alone now that his mind was in a mess. At this moment, only Li Chenglong was quick-witted and could help him, calmly helping him plan. Li Chenglong was now on his way back. He lived up to everyone's expectations and found the severely injured Meng Zhongjun and the others. He also rescued them. Then, on the way back, he received a call from Xiang Chong. Li Chenglong rushed back through the night and saw Xiang Chong. Then he forcefully detained Xiang Chong in the villa and did not allow him to take a step out. At this time, it was easy to get into trouble. Zhan Xuejuan was already in trouble. Xiang Chong could not have any more accidents. Looking at the dazed Xiang Chong, Li Chenglong only felt waves of powerlessness at this moment. He only thought of one sentence: fate, destiny, irreversible. Zhuo Xiaoduo had long predicted that Zhan Xuejuan would meet with a calamity of certain death. Therefore, he specially instructed himself to keep a close eye on her so that she could avoid the calamity. However, everything was fine, and she had already left the Zhan family. But because he was transferred away by a phone call, the subsequent events changed and took a turn for the worse. First, Zhuo Xiaoduo was busy with something and disappeared. He did not know how to deal with Zhan Xuejuan. He could only try his best to prevent the possibility of anything happening. Everything was going smoothly, but at the last moment, a phone call and a mission transferred him away. Because of this, there was a gap. Zhan Xuejuan, who had already left, was called back and killed herself. Tell me, with all these things happening one after another, where can you go to reason? Thinking back to Zhuo Xiaoduo's words, Li Chenglong could only feel his heart palpitating. Destiny. Even if you know it, you may not be able to escape it. Li Chenglong frantically searched for Zhuo Xiaoduo. The current situation was beyond his ability to deal with. However, he was shocked to find that Xiang Chong could not contact Zhuo Xiaoduo, and he could not contact Zhuo Xiaoduo either. Even their unique communication method was useless. Isn't all of this too much of a coincidence? Li Chenglong only felt that it was inconceivable. He could not believe it. Everything was inconceivable. Xiang Chong had just encountered such an irreversible thing. And on the other side, he could not contact the key person who could help him the most. Who dared to say that this was not God's will? Where did Zhuo Xiaoduo go? Li Chenglong had chosen to look for Zhuo Xiaoduo himself when he had discovered that Zhuo Xiaoduo had disappeared. This was because too many people and things were involved in this matter. What if Zhuo Xiaoduo had only returned to his hometown? What if he had gone to the Nine Heavens Pavilion to accompany Zhuo Xiaoyan? Or perhaps he had gone into closed-door training. Li Chenglong knew that Zhuo Xiaoduo had such a space. He would not be able to receive any news as long as he went to train. It was no different from him vanishing from the face of the earth. Therefore, Li Chenglong rushed back to the Phoenix City at night to confirm the situation. He visited Hu Riyun and teacher Hu, and learned that Zhuo Xiaoduo had already left. So, he ran back again. Even if he suddenly had an epiphany and was in that space, Zhuo could not have stayed there for more than 24 hours. Li Chenglong calculated silently. His phone was always charged. Since he had rushed back from the Phoenix City, he had been anxiously calling every few minutes. He had been full of hope every time. He had hoped that the other party would come out of closed-door training. However, his hopes had been dashed every time. If Zhuo had really gone into closed-door training for some reason and had encountered a critical juncture, it might have taken a little longer. But it would not have taken more than 36 hours. He is not a person who would not give instructions. Li Chenglong was burning with anxiety. He rushed back to the Fenghai city and returned to the villa as soon as possible. He burned incense for Grandma Shi, and the principal changed the offerings. Then, he sat in the living room and waited quietly for Zhua Xiaoduo's reappearance. However, 24 hours had passed, and there was no news. 36 hours had passed, and there was still no news. At this moment, Xiang Chong, Xiang Bing, Gao Chao, Yuner, Zhan Piapiao, Pai Yibao, and the other members of Zhua Xiao's gang had already been waiting in the villa. However, they did not dare to enter the living room. They could only wait outside. It was probably because Li Chenglong's temper was unprecedentedly hot. It was almost as if he would explode at the slightest provocation. No one wanted to, mainly because they did not dare to provoke Li Chenglong at this time. Li Chenglong sat in the living room for a long time. His eyes were slightly closed. He seemed to be taking a nap, but in fact, he was thinking nervously. Where did Zhua go? If he did not act on his own initiative and had an accident, then what kind of accident could it be? A life and death crisis? If it wasn't for the sudden turn of events, with his character, he wouldn't have left no traces behind. Then the person he's facing must be an extremely powerful expert, one that far surpasses us. No, it should be far beyond what Boss Zhua can handle. 36 hours. I can't wait any longer. The situation has changed. It is not at a level that I can handle alone. Li Chenglong did not hesitate anymore. He took out his phone and called Yi Chongqing and Wen Xingtian. So Xiaoduo was missing. When Yi Chongqing and Wen Xingtian heard this breaking news, they were almost scared to death. The two of them rushed to the villa immediately to confirm the situation. In particular, when Zhua Xiaoduo was last seen in Phoenix City, they called Hu Riyun and her husband to confirm it repeatedly. Then, the two of them reported this big news to their superiors. Yi Chongqing immediately called Nan Zhengxian, the chief of the southern region. Marshal Nan. Nan Zhengxian's voice was very bright. Chongqing, Happy New Year. Happy New Year, Marshal Nan. Something happened on our side, Yi Chongqing said. What could have happened on your side? Minister Nan should be in the military camp, having a meal with his subordinates. He could clearly hear the sound of laughter and shouting next to him. Zhua Xiaoduo is missing. Yi Chongqing's mood was unusually heavy, and his tone was unusually cold. On the other side, Nan Zhengxian suddenly paused. Then, he heard a sudden sound. Obviously, Nan Zhengxian came out of his room. He hurriedly asked, What? Say that again. Yi Chongqing sighed. Zhua Xiaoduo is missing. He should have disappeared during the spring festival break. We can't contact him no matter what. As he spoke, he went into detail about the investigation, the last traces of Zhua Xiaoduo before he went missing, and the people he came into contact with. Then he went into detail. On the other side, Marshal Nan had been holding his breath for a long time, but he didn't say a word. He listened quietly and summarized the information. He seemed to be very calm and unperturbed. When Yi Chongqing finished, Nan Zhengxian asked with unusual calmness, Is there anything else you want to add? Yi Chongqing thought quickly and looked at Li Chenglong. Li Chenglong shook his head. No, that's all the information we have now. Information about Zhua Xiaoduo must not be spread. You just wait quietly. Remember, don't spread even a single piece of information. No one is allowed to spread it. Wait for my call at any time. Pa Marshal Nan immediately hung up the phone. The room fell into an unprecedented silence. Yi Chongqing took a deep breath. He felt his heart beating so fast that it almost jumped out of his throat. His legs were a little weak. How is it? Li Chenglong asked. Don't spread the news. Don't act rashly. Don't spread the news. Yi Chongqing staggered and sat on the sofa. He looked at Li Chenglong and said, Besides you, who else knows? No one. No one. No one. Gao Qiao's eyes suddenly flashed and said, Sister Nian. She's swollen. You didn't tell her, right? Li Chenglong shook his head. How dare I? The most important thing now is her. When no one is looking at her, I don't dare to say anything. Who can guarantee how she will react? Chapter 10:15. Gao Qiao heaved a sigh of relief and said, It's good that he didn't say anything. Now that something has happened to Zhua, what I'm most afraid of is that our family is in a mess. If Sister Nian loses control, we will be even more helpless and helpless. What should we do next? Wait. We can only wait. When Xingtian sat down slowly, his eyes focused. No one knew what he was thinking. After a long time, he said softly, Xiao Duo is good at divination. He can see life and death, fortune and misfortune. He knows better than anyone how to seek fortune and avoid calamity, avoid death and prolong life. He will be fine. Maybe he is just temporarily trapped and can't contact us. No news is actually good news. As Chower said, let's not think too much and panic. Minister Nin has already intervened in this matter. He will find a way to find Xiao Duo's whereabouts. Everyone nodded silently. Although when Xingtian's words were meant to comfort himself, at the moment, no news was indeed good news. There was no need for him to panic. After the assassination attempt by the Dao Alliance's Sky Soar Realm expert, everyone had truly become jittery and paranoid about the dangers of every bush and tree. At this time, Xiaoduo suddenly disappeared for no reason. Moreover, he disappeared on the way back to Fenghai from Phoenix City. No one dared to continue thinking about what this meant. If they forced themselves to think about it, they wouldn't think in a good direction. Only a moment later, the sky above Fenghai suddenly felt as if a mountain was pressing down on them. An unprecedentedly powerful aura suddenly arrived. With a boom, the person broke through the sky and came in. It was the king of Zhuolu and his wife, who had arrived in Fenghai. The king of Zhuolu, Yun Zhonghu, Bai Yun Ferry, and Bai Yun Duo were surrounded by the biting cold air from the sky. They landed in the villa's courtyard with a whoosh and teleported to the living room in the next moment. What happened? Is this what happened? Search the entire way. Yun Zhonghu's aura was fully unleashed, and his murderous aura soared to the heavens. Capture everyone who was on the road or passed by that day. Also, search for the auras of all the experts on this road and capture them. Exterminate all the bandits on this road and interrogate them one by one. Bai Yunduo jumped in fright. Isn't this a bit too loud? This is big. The murderous intent in Yun Zhonghu's tiger-like eyes was piercingly cold, and a tyrannical aura rose from his body. Once any suspicious points are confirmed, blood will flow for thousands of miles, and the people will be plunged into misery and suffering. It will be nothing more than a trivial matter. Li Chenglong and the others were stunned by the conversation between the couple. Who is this? Why is it so easy to put people in misery and suffering? Move out now. Yun Zhonghu's cloak fluttered as he turned around and walked out. From now on, all officials and organizations in the astral souls are to listen to my orders. My orders are strictly enforced. If there is any disobedience, if there is any negligence, the bloodline of all 9 generations will be wiped out. Do not blame me for not warning you. At this moment, Yin Zhonghu had completely gone crazy. Now, he really wanted to kill someone to vent the huge negative emotions in his heart. Little junior brother had gone missing. The only bloodline of master and mistress had gone missing. Pass down my orders. Investigate the 12 major cities in the vicinity first. Uproot all the Dao League and Umno Alliance's strongholds, spies, and spies. I want to interrogate them personally. The Dao League is still an alliance. Bai Yunduo said worriedly. We still have to report this to Uncle Yu. Even if we are not afraid of being held accountable, it will still be troublesome. Alliance special, fuck. Troublesome, fucking troublesome. Yin Zhonghu's eyes were red. Who cares about the alliance now? Investigate. Investigate thoroughly. Investigate thoroughly. Tiger Guards, Yinkai assemble. Give up on everything and rush back quickly to investigate this matter thoroughly. Yin Zhonghu pointed at the dozen Tiger Guards and Yunkai behind him. 3 days. Yes. Heavenly King. More than a dozen people sat in more than a dozen directions. All of them unleashed their auras and whistled away. During this time, there were people coming and leaving continuously. In the sky above Fenghai, the wind and clouds surged, and the sky changed color. The wind blew in the sky, and the heavenly king of the right, Yu Dongtian, arrived with a murderous look on his face. Have you found anything? Have you found any clues? No. All of you go and help. A figure flashed. Nan Zhengxian had also arrived. You still haven't found anything? Hurry up and go back to your southern army. You're just causing trouble here. The king of Zwolu cursed. Get lost. Nan Zhengxian paused. His eyes were a little red. Then, he turned around and left. If you find anything, send me a message as soon as possible. Then, he flew into the sky. What should we do? Yu Dongtian and Yun Zhonghu looked at each other. Should we inform? Both of them rubbed their hands. Xiao Duo, go to Shangjing and keep an eye on Xiaoyan. Don't let her know about Xiao Duo's disappearance, and don't let her run around, Yun Zhonghu said to his wife. Okay. Immediately. Understood. Bai Yun Duo rushed into the sky like a stream of light, galloping far away. Yi Changqing, when Xing Tian and the others saw the series of changes and the arrival of several important people, they were all stunned and speechless for a long time. This time, the heavenly kings of the right and left came with their original faces. They didn't disguise themselves, so they were naturally recognized at a glance. The many guesses they had about Xiaoduo's identity in the past were finally confirmed at this moment. As expected, there was indeed a great background behind this kid. Otherwise, the heavenly kings of the right and left wouldn't have come in person as soon as something happened to this kid. Moreover, they directly tore through space to come here. Their urgency was unprecedented. Even when they were at the Sun and Moon Pass, facing enemies 10 times their number, the two heavenly kings weren't so flustered. What should we do next? We still have to talk about it. Yu Dongtian anxiously transmitted his voice to Yun Zhonghu. Master is now at the most critical moment. Yun Zhonghu's eyebrows twitched. We are about to achieve everything. If we are disturbed at this time, it is very likely that all our efforts will be in vain. But if we don't say it, we will be beaten to death. Yu Dongtian's eyebrows also twitched. Let's look for it first. Look for it for 2 days. Yun Zhonghu gritted his teeth. 2 days later, if we find it, then it's fine. If we can't find it, at that time, we will consider whether to tell Master. I will bear all the consequences caused by this matter. Yun Zhonghu repeated and made up his mind. The murderous intent in his eyes was almost tangible. You will bear the blame? Are you sure you can bear it? Shouldn't you tell my father first? Yu Dongtian looked hesitant and said, My father is guarding. Cough, what I mean is, if he's here to take the blame, the both of us will feel better. Yun Zhonghu looked at Yu Dongtian a little angrily. You're getting more and more overboard. Now you even want to push the blame to your own father? Yu Dongtian had an embarrassed look on his face. Uncle, you can't take the blame for this matter. Yun Zhonghu said, Fuck, I've been confused by you. Is this the time to push the blame? Master and mistress are in closed-door cultivation. The task of looking after little junior brother naturally falls to me. If something happens to little junior brother, then it is my problem. Even if Master doesn't say a word, I will still be ashamed. At this time, you still have the mood to think about pushing the blame. Do you believe that I will beat you to death with one punch? Okay. Let's look first. What if we find it soon? Okay, who do you think did it? Yu Dongtian asked telepathically. The Tao League is more likely. Yun Zhonghu gritted his teeth. I think so too. The sky flickered, and a tyrannical aura shrouded the sky. A person in white descended from the sky. It was a woman in a white robe. Her face was picturesque, and her appearance was peerless. What happened? The woman frowned and looked at the two heavenly kings. Aunt Wu, don't worry. Nothing happened. Yun Zhonghu hurriedly bowed. Why did she come out? She was famous for being untouchable. Looking at the entire Astral Souls continent, she was one of the 3 most untouchable women. She was ranked before his wife, second only to his master's wife. The woman in white carried a guqin on her back. When she heard Yun Zhonghu's words, the guqin suddenly appeared in her hand. Her slender hands gently plucked the strings. It's really nothing, Yun Zhonghu said anxiously. It's a matter of a younger generation. You don't have to worry about it. You are also very busy. Hurry. The woman in white snorted. After a moment of silence, she said, Where is your master? My master is in seclusion. Yin Zhonghu coughed and replied, "Of course. Cough, cough. He is in seclusion with my master's wife." Boom! Yin Zhonghu was immediately sent flying more than 3 feet. Damn it! The woman in white flew away. Before she left, she kicked Yin Zhonghu to vent her anger. "Even if you don't say it, I will investigate it myself." Yin Zhonghu looked sullen, but he did not dare to speak. When the woman in white left, he finally stood up with a grimace. He still had lingering fears. Didn't they say that there is still some time before the Battle of the Worlds? Why did she jump out now? You asked me, but who should I ask? Yu Dantian, who had been pretending to be a quail at the side, finally came back to life. How scary. That master's wife of yours is really not scary. You dare to say to her face? Oomph. I don't dare. Let's get down to business first. It is said that the people of the Dao League and the Feng family have been very active in the White Mountain and Blackwater area recently. They are looking for information everywhere. Yu Dantian said. Well, I heard about this too. They seem to be looking for someone, the king of Zwolu said. But the person they are looking for seems to be the third prince. It has nothing to do with little junior brother. The heavenly king of the right nodded. That little guy from the royal family is an idiot. After doing such a thing, he actually left clues for the Dao League. I think they will find out about him soon. Yesterday, the Feng family and the Feng family already sent a few experts to Shangjing. The king of Zwolu said lightly, but this matter is not within my jurisdiction. I have no intention of interfering. The heavenly king of the right said, Me too. The two of them stood in the sky and chatted. The entire Fenghai city under their feet, including all the movements in the surroundings, was within the range of their divine senses. As time passed, the two of them became more and more impatient. Chapter 10:16. The two heavenly kings felt their hearts beating faster and faster. They had a vague feeling that a great disaster was about to befall them. Unfortunately, there was nothing to talk about. They could only stare and endure. By the way, there was a sudden rainstorm in the Umno Alliance yesterday. Do you think it has something to do with Xiao Duo? Yu Dantian, try to find a topic to talk about. It's two different things. It's two completely different things. Yin Zhonghu said, that strange phenomenon was caused by the Flood Witch's breakthrough. Sigh. Yu Dantian was also a little envious. Flood, this senior is really a genius. He's worthy of being invincible. If little junior brother grows up, he won't be inferior to him. The life of invincibility won't belong to him forever. Moreover, there's still Master. After Master completes his breakthrough this time, he might not necessarily be inferior to the Flood Witch. Yin Zhonghu said slowly. Suddenly, the murderous intent in his eyes exploded. No matter who took little junior brother, this time, I'll definitely make him pay the price. The topic was back again. Yu Dantian looked at Yin Zhonghu, who was about to explode, and tactfully kept quiet. On this day, from Fenghai to Phoenix City and the surrounding areas, all the bandits were unlucky. All the strongholds of the Umno Alliance and the Dao League were uprooted. There were no exceptions. All the nearby cities, all the organizations, all the armies, all the officials, all the martial artists were all included in the unified command. The entire country's machinery operated with unprecedented efficiency. The power it exerted was really terrifying. Countless people had committed crimes their whole lives. They originally wanted to continue living freely, but today they were dealt with. Countless people were caught at the right time. Countless people were caught because of inappropriate comments. Under the command of the furious King Zwolu, this road and the surrounding 9 major cities were cleaned up as if they had been washed away by a rainstorm. Those who escaped the net time and time again were really. Not a single one was spared this time. Moreover, this sweeping storm continued to spread to the surrounding cities, becoming more and more intense as time passed. The Umno Alliance was fine, but the Dao League was a part of the alliance. Very soon, the higher-ups called to protest and asked for the release of the people. However, in the eyes of the king of Zwolu, there was only one word for it. Scram. That in Shangjing, Zhuoxianyan was already restless and anxious. Since returning to Shangjing, Zhuoxianyan had completed several tasks in a row. She should have eliminated her hostility, or at least not be so motivated. Balancing work with rest was the right thing to do. However, she didn't know why, but she felt that her heart was full of murderous intent. She couldn't get rid of it, so she killed several batches of targets in a row. Every time he passed by the third prince's residence, this feeling would increase dramatically. The thought of directly killing his way in and slaughtering his way in would never go away. The more he thought about it, the more intense it became. As a result, she was like a powder keg that could explode at any time. I didn't even get to spend New Year's Eve with Gouda. This new year is such a waste. Zhuoxianyan was very unhappy about this. Although he tries to take advantage of me when I'm with Gouda, but, I can beat him up. Not to mention that after the first day of the new year, she couldn't get through to Zhuoxiaoduo when she tried to call him. If it was just once or twice, it wouldn't be a big deal. Maybe this brat entered the Tower of Annihilation to cultivate, so it was reasonable that he couldn't get through to her. If it was 3 or 5 times, it would still be reasonable. After all, she called him within 1 or 2 days. However, on the third day of the new year, 2 days had passed. Not only did this brat not take the initiative to call her back, but he also couldn't get through as before. This was a problem. Obviously, he's got a lot of guts. If he doesn't get beaten up for 3 days, he's going to do whatever he wants. Zhuoxianyan was fuming. She was already planning thousands of torture methods in her heart. The next time she saw Gouda, she would definitely teach this disobedient fellow a lesson. This was intolerable. Even if she could tolerate it, she couldn't tolerate it. However, Zhuoxianyan liked to think about things that were pricking her lungs. She thought that Gouda must be busy flirting with girls, right? Or perhaps he was trying to please some shameless woman who seduced her fiancé, or flirting in front of other girls. The next time I see him, I'll beat him to death. No, I can't beat him to death. The next time I see him, I'll have a cold war with him. I'll ignore him. He'll be anxious to death. I'll let him coax me. He won't be able to coax me even if he tries 8 or 10 times. The number of times I call him is more than the number of times I call him. I can't forgive him so easily. I must keep a tight grip on him. Another day passed impatiently. On the 4th day of the new year, she still couldn't get through to Gouda. Zhuoxianyan couldn't help but feel restless. Although little doggy liked to talk nonsense, he wasn't someone who didn't tell him what to do. Could it be that something had happened? Did something happen? Originally, because she was annoyed, she planned to use the mission as an excuse to divert her attention. However, she became absent-minded and her temper became more and more fiery. According to Zhuoxianyan's understanding of Zhuoxiaoduo, he would definitely not ignore her calls, especially after so many times in one breath. The wheels of time were turning. Seeing that it was the 5th day of the new year, Zhuoxianyan couldn't hold it in anymore. I have a mission tonight and tomorrow morning. After I finish my mission and catch these scums, I'll immediately ask for leave and go to Fenghai. I'll see what happened that night. When Zhuoxianyan went out on a mission, she immediately used her peak returning mysterious realm, freezing energy, and froze the target, the entire bandit nest, into ice. Her method was fast, simple, and violent. Everyone who went out on the mission with her was terrified. What the hell is this still returning mysterious realm? Even a peak flying heavens expert wouldn't be able to do this, right? The next morning, after handing in the mission, Zhuoxianyan directly asked for leave. I have something to do and need to go to Fenghai. Okay, let's temporarily set the time for leave for a week. It might be delayed. It's okay. Half a month is fine. Zhuoxianyan's mouth twitched. When other people asked for leave, they would be scolded. However, when it was her turn to ask for leave, not only was she happy and comfortable, but she was also more considerate. If she asked for a day, she would be given 2 days. If she asked for 2 days, she would be given 7 days. If she asked for a week, she would be given half a month. Zhuoxianyan was naturally aware of the obvious difference in treatment. While he was grateful, he also raised his vigilance. You're being so lenient and considerate to me. You don't have other thoughts, do you? Even though the old man in front of her looked old and senile, Sui Xiaoyan didn't let her guard down. Humph, if you really have other thoughts, with my current cultivation, I can freeze you into an ice cube in a matter of minutes. If the leader in charge of the returning mysterious realm group knew that Zhuo Xiaoyan had such thoughts, he would probably vomit blood. It's not that I have other thoughts about you. It's just that you have too much background. I really can't afford to offend you. As usual, Zhuo Xiaoyan exuded a gust of cold wind. She directly soared into the sky and left Shangjing. However, the cold wind around her was much colder than before. However, she didn't know if it was a coincidence or not. As soon as she left Shangjing, she met Bai Yunduo, who was rushing towards her. Zhuo Xiaoyan obviously knew Bai Yunduo. When the starry mountains opened, Bai Yunduo was standing in the sky and monitoring all the teams. Zhuo Xiaoyan knew that this patrol inspector was a big shot who stood at the peak of the entire astral souls. Now that she saw her, even someone as arrogant as her didn't dare to neglect her. She was the first to greet her. "Hello, Patrol Inspector." Zhuo Xiaoyan. Bai Yunduo pretended to be surprised. "Yours was Xiaoyan from a Nine Heavens Pavilion, right? Your code name is Civet?" Zhuo Xiaoyan said respectfully. "That's Xiaoyan. I didn't expect Patrol Inspector to know me." Zhuo Xiaoyan really didn't expect Bai Yunduo to know her name. Under normal circumstances, her information was far from being qualified to enter the eyes of such a big shot. She really didn't expect this high and mighty patrol inspector to know her. Even Zhuo Xiaoyan couldn't help but feel proud. "You look like you're in a hurry. Where are you going? Can you tell me?" "I'm going to Fenghai." "Oh, what a coincidence. I just came back from Fenghai." Bai Yunduo smiled confidently. "Oh, you're going to Fenghai to see your brother? How do you know everything?" Zhuo Xiaoyan was surprised. "You and your brother are both on the top genius list of the astral souls." Bai Yunduo casually made up a list and smiled amiably. "And on this list, there are only a total of 6 people. Even if I don't want to be familiar with all of you, I really can't do it." "Ha, I see." Zhuo Xiaoyan was enlightened. Everything made sense. Zhuo Xiaoyan was well aware of her and Puppy's innate talents. She knew that if there was such a list, the two of them would definitely be the first and second place at the top. This wasn't out of modesty. The esteemed master had already proved this point. It wasn't surprising that the astral souls had another list of heavenly talents that they paid special attention to. Zhuo Xiaoyan even thought that Li Qinglong might be among the 6 people. She just didn't know where he was ranked. Zhuo Xiaoyan had heard too many times from Zhuo Xiaoduo about this person who had been by Puppy's side for the past few years. If you're going to see Zhuo Xiaoduo, you might as well not go. You won't be able to see him even if you go. Bai Yunduo chuckled. "Well, what do you mean, master?" Zhuo Xiaoduo rushed back to his hometown in Phoenix City on New Year's Eve to visit his old friends. Due to a chance encounter, his Taoist heart was enlightened and his state of mind was greatly improved. Therefore, the Hidden Dragon High School specially arranged a 1-month hellish cultivation for him. During this period, he's not allowed to bring any communication devices to prevent it from affecting the cultivation. Bai Yunduo said, "I believe that after this cultivation, he'll be reborn. He might even be able to catch up with you." Bai Yunduo smiled and said, "How is it? This is great news, isn't it? Are you happy? Are you happy?" You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.